members. The Deputy Speaker.
Are there any constituency statements by honourable members? I call the member for Indi.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. No veteran should have to fight their own government to access the health care that they've already earned. But veterans in my electorate and across the country are deeply concerned about the government's proposed $5,000 cap on DVA allied health services. Allied health care is a crucial part of their recovery, rehabilitation, long-term health and wellbeing. In this year's budget, the government committed to increasing provider fees for veterans' allied health services. The Royal Commission into Defence and Veteran Suicides identified low DVA fees as a barrier to veterans accessing care, and I really welcome action to address that. Unfortunately, though, the government is fixing one problem while potentially creating another. Alongside the fee increase, the government is introducing a $5,000 annual spending cap on allied health services. The cap replaces the existing 12-session treatment cycle, and many veterans will appreciate not having to get multiple referrals for chronic and lifelong conditions. But for too many veterans, $5,000 will just simply not cover everything they require. The government has confirmed that there will be a mechanism to spend more than $5,000 where there is valid clinical need. They've described the cap as a threshold for review. But the problem here is we've got no clarity about what that means. Who will decide whether someone's medical needs are valid and on what basis? How long will it take? What information will be required? How much additional paperwork will this create for veterans and their healthcare providers? It's understandably causing significant concern for veterans who rely on allied health treatment to stay well. Now, my electorate of Indi is home to more than 5,000 current or former Defence Force members, including Major Jeff Robinson, who recently retired in Wodonga after 43 years of service. Major Robinson put it to me very clearly. For veterans living with chronic pain, traumatic brain injury or post-traumatic stress, allied health is essential treatment, not a discretionary benefit. Veterans should not have to jump through hoops in order to access the treatment they need and are entitled to. If the government is not willing to scrap the cap, at the very least they must consider raising the threshold to a more appropriate amount, and they must guarantee a quick and simple review process with no interruptions to ongoing care. Consultation on the changes is about to commence, and I urge DVA to work constructively and collaboratively with veterans, their families and communities, and allied health professionals. Major Robinson said, and I quote, "I believed that when the country asked us to serve, it would stand behind us in return." I don't think he was wrong. In Australia, we're proud to look after those who fought for us, and I call on the government to uphold that commitment.
I thank the member and I call the member for Lingiari.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. On Sunday the 19th of July, Imaloo Tigers took on the Ranku Eagles in Wirramiunga on my beautiful home community of the Tiwi Islands. In the women's match, Tupalinga Superstars and Jikalaru went head-to-head in a fantastic match, with my team, Tupalinga Stars, coming home victorious. The Tiwi Grand Final is the highlight of the year for my mob, a time when we come together to celebrate our culture and our great love of football. For our communities, football is more than just a game. It showcases our people, our athleticism, our community connection and our deep pride in who we are. This year we also got to celebrate with a very special guest, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese. Also in attendance, the Member for Solomon and Minister Malanderi McCarthy. There are few people Tiwis would be willing to draw their eyes from on Grand Final Day, but the PM was one of them. The Prime Minister's visit was a huge moment for my people, but more than that, demonstrates his deep and personal commitment to our remote communities. On the Saturday before the Grand Final, Tiwis also celebrated the Tiwi Islands Cultural Festival. For anyone who wants to witness the incredible culture of the Tiwi Islands, this is the place to come. Tiwi culture has always kept our people grounded, and each year the festival grows from strength to strength. This year was a particularly beautiful display of our art, music, culture and the industries on the Tiwi Islands. This could not have happened without the Tiwi Cultural Committee, who do so much work in preserving and making sure our language and our culture stays binded. I also want to acknowledge the hard work on Wirramiunga from the Tiwi Islands Regional Council, and particularly the new CEO, who's done a fantastic job, and that's Heidi Dawn and her amazing staff on the ground who made it possible. Today I want to just finish my message in terms of my constituency and thinking about the funeral that will take place tomorrow on the weekend for Kumajai little baby. And I just want to acknowledge in terms of the strength of the Alice Springs community and what came together, but to the family of that Kumajai little baby, her grandparents, her grandfather, her grandmother and her mother Jacinta. I'm sending my deep love and prayers, your leadership and your messages of unity, and particularly the grandparents calling for everyone not to be divided. This isn't a black and white issue. This is about community coming together and staying strong. Our community must again come together to ensure that Kumajai little baby is given the respect and the rest that she so deserves. Thank you, Speaker.
I thank the member and I call the member for Wentworth.
Deputy Speaker, I want to pay tribute today to remarkable Australian Bob Montgomery. Bob and his grandson Tom recently rode over 5,000 kilometres from Broome to Bob's hometown of Bowral to raise awareness of motor neuron disease. This was Bob's 6th charity long-distance rides, having previously crossed the country multiple times to raise funds for MND New South Wales. After 41 days on the bike, Bob and Tom arrived on Bowral on the 2nd of August, having raised over $127,000. But sadly, Bob passed away shortly after. I had the privilege of meeting Bob and Tom short before they set off, and I was struck by Bob's humility, his kindness and his extraordinary tenacity by deciding to do a month-long bike ride at 82 years of age. He spoke plainly about the heartbreaking impact of MND on people he had known, and he simply wanted to do what he could to make a difference. That is such an important Australian spirit, seeing a problem and just wanting to help other people. I have no doubt that he did. Not just those who supported him along the way, but for all Australians living with MND who may benefit from the research and funding that Bob's efforts helped enable. To his wife Jenny, his grandson Tom and all of his loved ones, I extend my sincerest condolence for your loss, and I encourage everyone to visit bobmontgomery.com.au to support his legacy. Thank you, Bob. I would also like to recognise some of the other individuals in our community who've made an extraordinary contribution. I was fortunate enough to attend the Sydney City and Eastern Suburbs ceremony for New South Wales Volunteer Awards earlier this week. In particular, I want to pay tribute to Bondi Beach surf lifesaver Robin Farmer, who was named Volunteer of the Year in honour of her years of service, as well as her courage and calm in responding to the Bondi Beach terrorist attack that occurred on December 14. She is someone who did her work not because she wanted the accolades, but because she, again, wanted to help her community that she's so proud of. Likewise to the COA Bondi Support Meals team and the 215 volunteers who were awarded Volunteer Team of the Year for the work that they did in the aftermath of that attack. Again, these people, at a time of enormous concern and grief and heartache, they turned that energy and that heartache into making a difference and caring for other people, and brought enormous comfort at a time of great uncertainty and a time of great grief. Thank you for the work that you did at that hardest moment. And finally, to Tanya Coleman, who was awarded Adult Volunteer of the Year. She does an incredible work in the Randwick netball space, and I know so many of my community spend their time there at Randwick Netball, and we're very grateful for the work that she and others do. I'll finally mention Fionn McCabe, a young volunteer, and Susie Ellerman for senior volunteer. Thank you to everyone for their work, and and congratulations to everyone who was nominated. It was an outstanding celebration of what our community cares about, which is looking after each other.
I thank the member and I call the Minister for Veterans Affairs and Defence Personnel.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. The Albanese Labor government is building an Australia where hard work pays off and there's more opportunity to get ahead. More jobs are being created under our government, more than ever in a single term, and wages are going up too. Since we were elected in 2022, minimum wage workers are taking home some $12,000 more a year. In our community, the work of our government to create jobs and opportunity has made a massive difference, with unemployment at its lowest in the last 15 years. Every person should have the opportunity to get a well-paid, secure job. It can be life-changing, and that's why we're working to give more people that chance. This month, I spoke to graduates of a recent Job Ready course run in our community as part of our $10 million Local Jobs, Local People grants program. Programs like this are breaking down barriers faced by job seekers, giving them the training and support they need, including connecting with local employers. Creating local jobs has been a double win for Burt. A project like the Armidale train line upgrades and extension to Byford sees good jobs created locally and leaves a lasting legacy for Perth's southeast. A 46-minute journey from Byford to the CBD that costs only $2.80 on a smart rider. And more transport projects are now underway. The Tonkin Highway extension and the Thomas Road upgrades are massive construction projects, employing locals, and when they're complete will mean faster and safer journeys, with less freight moving on local roads. Upgrades further up Tonkin Highway are also underway to upgrade the Hale and Welshpool Road intersections with freeway-style interchanges. Early works for this are happening at the moment. A double win. Well-paid local jobs on projects to benefit our community and projects that will save you time on the road. All these projects and more to come, like the widening of the Kwinana Freeway, are not just building a better Burt, they're employing our community. If you want the skills to be part of building our community, we're backing you too. With more than 100 free TAFE courses that over 123,000 Western Australians have benefited from, along with making free TAFE permanent, we're backing tradies too, with a $10,000 incentive for new housing construction apprentices to help them finish their training and get on with the job of delivering the new housing that we need here in Australia. It's all part of building a better Burt and delivering real change for Australians.
I thank the Minister. I call the member for Warringah.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Small businesses are the backbone of Warringah. Warringah is home to around 8,000 small employing businesses and another 12,000 sole traders. But many are being squeezed by rising insurance premiums, energy bills, rents, wages, supplies, cybersecurity costs and weak consumer spending. Small business owners are often working longer, paying themselves far less and absorbing costs they cannot pass on without losing customers. I've repeatedly raised these pressures in this place. Small businesses do much of the heavy lifting in our economy, and too often they are treated as an afterthought by government. For Warringah's tradies, couriers, mobile service providers and delivery businesses, the fluctuating price of fuel is adding to operating costs. Much more needs to be done to assist business in electrifying and reducing their energy and transport costs. Yet local businesses continue to innovate despite these headwinds. Brookvale-based Alchemy Charge is building the digital infrastructure that enables electric vehicle charging in strata buildings. More than 4.2 million Australians live in strata communities, but many cannot easily charge an electric vehicle at those locations. Alchemy's Charge is finalising Strata Assist, a national platform designed to help apartment residents and strata communities overcome the approval and practical barriers to installing charging. This is exactly the kind of locally grown innovation Australia should be helping to scale. The government has finally made the instant asset write-off permanent in this recent budget, providing businesses with some certainty. But the $20,000 threshold remains far too low to address all of those pressures and headwinds that I named earlier. It should be increased to at least $50,000 so businesses can actually invest in productive equipment, cybersecurity, solar, batteries and low-cost electric vehicles. Small businesses also need to be paid on time. Nearly 1 in 3 large businesses take more than 30 days to pay their small business suppliers last year. Cash flow is essential in a small business. Small businesses should not be forced to act as interest-free lenders to much larger companies. And the government can start by setting that example in its own processes. Finally, staffing remains a critical issue for many small businesses. Any discussion of slashing migration amounts must be assessed against the real impact to industries and areas of business, especially across small business. What I get too often in meeting with chambers of commerce and businesses is the challenges and delays, the complexity of getting sponsored visas and the delay and uncertainty which makes it impossible for them to plan ahead. Warringah small businesses are resilient, innovative and ambitious, but the government must do more to reduce unnecessary costs and improve their cash flow and operating business environments.
I thank the member. I call the member for Bass.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Today, I rise to celebrate the opening of a renewed multicultural centre in Launceston, Welcome Cultural Services. This is much more than a refurbished building. It's a place where people are welcomed, supported and given the confidence to participate fully in our community. I want to acknowledge the staff, volunteers, community leaders, families and partner organisations who have made this centre what it is. Buildings can be renovated with bricks, with paint, but centres like this are built by the people who work in them. They are built by the volunteer who sits beside someone as they practice a sentence that they are nervous to say out loud, by the staff member who helps a family understand a form, enrol a child, prepare for work, or navigate a completely unfamiliar system, and the person who makes sure someone feels a little less alone on their first days in a new country. I do have a personal connection to this organisation when a few years ago I volunteered with a program helping adults to learn the English they needed to participate in local work and business. And what stayed with me was their determination. Starting again is not easy. Learning another language as an adult, particularly English, is not easy. Building a new life, often far away from family, friends, and everything familiar, takes real courage. But when people are supported, they thrive. And when people are welcomed, they contribute. And when people are given confidence, they build confidence in others. Our whole community is stronger because of it. The Australian Government contributed $2 million towards this project, helping transform the Harmony Building into a modern and accessible hub for culturally and linguistically diverse communities right across Launceston and northern Tasmania. Between 3,000 to 5,000 people each year are expected to use this centre through workshops, events, partner programs and essential services. That means thousands of moments where someone is told in very real and very practical ways, you are welcome here. At a time when difference can too easily be presented as something to fear, this centre tells a much better and stronger story. It tells us that hearing another language spoken in our streets is not something to be anxious about. It tells us that a child growing up speaking more than one language has not lost something they have gained. It is a strength. And it tells us that helping someone learn English is not about asking them to leave their first language or their culture behind. It's about giving them another key to work, education, services, friendship, independence and confidence. And that's the kind of community I want Northern Tasmania to be, one where people are proud of where they've come from and confident as to where they're going. Welcome Cultural Services gives practical expression to those values every single day. It says to newly arrived families, we will help you find your feet. It says to young people, your culture is not something that you should be ashamed of, it is something to be proud of. And it says to our seniors, you are not alone. To everyone at Welcome Cultural Services, thank you for the work that you do. To every person who walks through these doors, your stories matter. Your culture and your languages are respected, and your contribution makes Northern Tasmania stronger.
And I call the member for Bowman.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. During the winter break, I spent a lot of time talking with locals in my electorate in the Redlands. Hundreds attended community coffee catch-ups that I held in Birkdale, Cleveland and Coochie-Mudlow Island. I knocked on hundreds of doors and spoke to many at local shopping centre visits. But wherever I went, one issue came up time and time again: Labor's cuts to the private health insurance rebate. For many older Redlanders, private health insurance isn't a luxury. It's something they've paid into for decades. They have sacrificed to take pressure off public hospitals and often making tough decisions around the kitchen table to keep their cover. Now Labor wants them to pay more. The Albanese government is pressing ahead with cuts to the private health insurance rebate for Australians over 65. It says this is about fairness between generations, but the reality is that older Australians are simply going to be facing higher costs. In the Redlands, there are 23,169 people over the age of 65 with private health insurance. Together, they account for more than 23,000 hospital admissions every year. Every one of those people who keeps their private health cover helps ease pressure on an already stretched public system. The government argues these cuts will save money, but the department's own actuarial modelling suggests the opposite. It found that while the Commonwealth would save around $481 million, the resulting increase in demand on public hospitals would cost governments around $547 million. In other words, taxpayers end up paying more while patients wait longer. These cuts come after another round of premium increases and during a cost of living crisis that is already stretching household budgets. National Seniors has warned that some older Australians could end up paying more than $1,000 each year to keep the level of cover they already have. 3 million Australians are expected to dump their private health cover as a result of this policy. Thousands of Redlanders have done the right thing by maintaining private health insurance and helping to take pressure off our public hospitals. Now they're being penalised for making that sacrifice. Stephen from Vicky Point wrote to me and he said, quote, "The message that Labor is sending to young Australians is that better off not saving, not investing and certainly not taking out health insurance, but rather relying on government handouts." Paul from Alex Hills told me that the government has kicked me in the guts with this insult to older Australians. Only Labor could deliver a policy that will create higher costs for older Australians, longer waiting lists, and still somehow manage to cost the taxpayer far, far more.
I thank the member. I call the Minister for Infrastructure, Transport, Regional Development and Local Government.
Thanks very much, Deputy Speaker. As Minister, I'm incredibly fortunate to be able to see many projects being delivered across the country. But while new buildings and upgraded facilities are really important, what matters most is what they mean to the communities that use them. In my own community, the Eastwood Leisure Complex in the heart of Ballarat is a true community asset. For more than 80 years, it's been a place where people can come together. It's the home of the mighty Wildcats basketball team. It hosts everything from U3A classes, holiday programs to mahjong groups and Irish dancing. It's a vibrant hub that serves people of all ages and backgrounds. To ensure it remains accessible and fit for purpose, this government invested $8.5 million through the competitive Growing Regions program to transform the facility. I recently attended the start of demolition works and it was exciting to reflect on what Eastwood has meant to generations of Ballarat residents while imagining what it will become for future generations. Another project I'm particularly proud of is the Vickers Street Community Hub in Sabas. Late last year, we officially opened this fantastic new facility, supported by $4.5 million that I was proud to secure alongside the Prime Minister during the 2022 election campaign. The project replaced the old building with a purpose-built community hub, future meeting rooms, a large multi-purpose space and a commercial kitchen. What makes it especially unique is that it is shared by both the Senior Cits Group and a kindergarten, creating opportunities for connection across generations. Importantly, the City of Ballarat worked closely with the Senior Citizens Group to preserve photographs and memories from the original building, ensuring the community's history remains very much part of its future, and certainly the well-loved library and book exchange is there as well. Anyone who's spent time in Ballarat knows that it's a welcoming and inclusive city, and since the multicultural communities of the Goldfields era, Ballarat has embraced people from all over the world. It's why I was again delighted to see that $500,000 has been allocated to the Ballarat Regional Multicultural Centre's Ballarat Welcome Centre. With work now underway, the upgraded facility will better connect people with settlement, employment and health services while providing welcoming spaces for community activities. Just as importantly, the upgrade will create a welcoming and modern workplace for the staff and the volunteers, ensuring that they have the facilities they need to continue supporting multicultural communities across our region. These projects remind us that while governments can help to build infrastructure, it is the people who bring these places to life. It's the friendships formed, the connections strengthened, the memories created within these walls that make our communities stronger, more resilient and more connected.
I thank the Minister and I call the member for Wannon.
Thanks, Deputy Speaker. And during the winter break, it was a great opportunity for me to get out and about in my electorate, visit some of the wonderful 300 communities that I have in my electorate, and in particular to head down the Great Ocean Road and see what was happening. And I did one of my listening posts at Princetown. And Princetown is a very small community on the Great Ocean Road, not far from the 12 Apostles. And when I was there, I bumped into Ingrid out the front of the general store, and there was activity in the general store. So I asked Ingrid what was going on, and she said the general store is about to reopen. And so it was absolutely fantastic to be able to do a social media post with her partner, Daniel. And we put that onto Facebook and Instagram and other social media platforms, as you do, and the Warrnambool Standard saw it, so they did a story on them, and it was fantastic because Princetown has seen two of its businesses close, and to see the general store opening again is just such fantastic news. And I say to anyone who is travelling down the Great Ocean Road or anyone who lives in southwest Victoria, if you get the opportunity, pop in to the Princetown General Store. You can have a coffee from 10 a.m. onwards, or, and I assume you might want to wait till midday for this, you'll be able to have a frothy. You'll be able to have a beer or a wine. Now, if you've had a really hard time, I suppose, you know, maybe I'm not quite sure what the liquor licence hours are, but you might even be able to have one at 10, who knows. But anyway, it is fantastic. They'll have all sorts of other food offering. If you need some things just because you've forgotten your milk or something, they'll be there as well. But it's just wonderful to see a small community which has had a bit of a tough time because two of their businesses have closed, to see one reopening. There's further accommodation to come, and it is the most beautiful, magnificent spot, and it has a little bit of beach which is truly magnificent. And can I say to David Cosson, thank you for your email. David saw my social media post. He had a couple of comments which were points very well made, but also said that he'd been down there and he'd tried the coffee, and I think he might have even tried a beer, and he said it was just fantastic to see the general store open again. So if you can get to Princetown and have a coffee or a beer, make sure you do.
I thank the member, and I call the Minister for Northern Australia.
Thank you, Acting Deputy Speaker. The federal and state Labor governments are continuing to deliver for my electorate of Brand, which is I'm so pleased that my friend Georgia Tree is standing for the seat of Secret Harbour in the upcoming state by-election. Port Kennedy sits in my electorate, and for 9 years I was able to represent Secret Harbour, Golden Bay, Singleton and Carnup before a redistribution. And I know that Georgia will make a fantastic local representative for those suburbs as well as Lakelands and Medora Bay. Georgia grew up in the area. She went to Warnbro Primary School and she went to the Warnbro Community High School. Her father worked up the road at Alcoa and raised Georgia and her brother Callum alone on a sparky's wage after her mother died of cancer. Georgia is a fighter and she is a true local. She's always fought for the real cost of living relief and to deliver health and transport infrastructure that the residents and the businesses of Secret Harbour need and deserve. I was really proud and pleased to stand alongside Georgia to announce the next phase of the widening of the Kwinana Freeway, and that's a $700 million project jointly funded by state and federal Labor governments. It's projects like this that have real impacts on people's lives. It will mean people in Brand and in the suburbs of Secret Harbour will spend less time on the road and more time with their families and friends at home. Like me, Georgia is passionate about tackling cost of living for locals, and that's why Labor is delivering tax cuts for every single Australian worker. We are strengthening Medicare, boosting bulk billing, so now there are more bulk billing clinics in Secret Harbour. We are making free TAFE permanent, so that means more tradies are able to train and build the homes we need and for them to have great jobs into the future. We are making childcare cheaper and extending paid parental leave. The Labor governments, state and federal governments are committed to AUKUS, to the upgrades of HMAS Sterling, and we are delivering unprecedented levels of support and funding to improve the lives of veterans and their families, slashing waiting times for veterans' compensation claims. And can I thank the Port Kennedy RSL for all they do for veterans in our community. We are ensuring real wage increases so that you earn more and you get to keep more of what you earn for all of those who live and work in Secret Harbour. Georgia understands how important all of these things are for the people of Secret Harbour, and she has been fighting for them her whole life. As she has said, without Labor's Medicare, her mother's cancer treatments would have bankrupted her family. Without Labor's support of TAFE, her father would not have been able to retrain and provide for her and for Callum. Georgia understands Labor's values because she has lived them all her life, and only Georgia Tree can deliver real outcomes for the people of Secret Harbour.
I thank the member for Herbert.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. It's been a busy time in Townsville over the last few weeks. First, we saw the Townsville Titans claim victory in a nationwide tug-of-war competition that was held in Townsville, and then they went back-to-back victory as they travelled to Cairns the next day and doing their tug-of-war. I went to Aikenvale State School. Aikenvale State School is a great school within the Townsville boundaries, and they asked me to come speak about just what different levels of government do through their humanities or their HAS education. But then they said to me, we have an idea. We have a policy that should become law, and we're going through the process of writing it up now, but we will tell you a little bit about it. And they told me that they wanted to make school days a 4-day week. And they debated long and hard with each other and against me, and they said they're going to make sure that they have a policy wrapped up, and so that I can bring it to Canberra and talk about it on the floor of Parliament. These young people were very excited, not just because of getting or potentially trying to develop a policy to make sure they only have to go to school for 4 days, but because they want to be involved in the process. They learnt about different levels of government. They spoke about how many councillors we have, who our mayor was, the premier, the state government, the opposition, and also the federal government. Then they knew who the Prime Minister was, the opposition leader. They knew parts of what our roles were, which I thought was just fantastic for a primary school to be so well informed on how the process works. And I did tell them that I'll have to come back and when they've got their policy ready to go. I also attended the Challenge Games. The Challenge Games is a fantastic event that is for young people who have disabilities and all abilities to compete in a Olympic-style event where you have people who may need aids to manoeuvre around, like wheelchairs, walking aids. They were running up and down the red track, they were participating in games, but most importantly, they were there cheering each other on. And it was great to see all these young people from around Northern Australia come to the Challenge Games in Townsville, supporting each other and knowing that sport is a way that we all connect together. And this weekend, we have the Wallabies playing in Townsville at our world-class stadium at Queensland Country Bank Stadium. And it's just fantastic that Townsville is getting such spectacular and massive events, like having the Wallabies there, having the different events, having soccer. As we're going forward into the Olympics, it's just fantastic to see Townsville being the capital of Northern Australia.
I thank the member and I call the member for Swan.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Imagine being able to do the career that you love and not having to choose between prac versus paying the rent. This has been an issue for so many health students. I was very lucky, and a few months ago, a fabulous young woman called Gabby came to my office. She's a physio student in her second year at Curtin University, and she came to speak to me about the realities of prac poverty placement, which is basically where health science students have to do 1,000 hours of paid prac and not get paid for it. She was really concerned, and she saw some of the improvements that were happening in other sectors, and she was explaining how she wanted to make sure that she saw that this happened for physiotherapy students. And so for too long, there have been so many people weighing up their ability to complete their degree versus being able to pay rent and buy groceries. And guess what? The Albanese government is now extending the Commonwealth paid prac placement to 10 more health professions. This includes physios, clinical psychs, OTs, pathologists, paramedics, radiographers, pharmacists, rehab therapists, audiologists and podiatrists. For regional students, not having access to paid prac takes a really big hit. In WA, many students have to move from regional WA to the city, which has a huge cost. To then not do paid prac for 1,000 hours was such a big financial hit. But the converse is true as well, where city kids move to the regions to sometimes feel some of the acute shortages of skills, and they have to decide on whether they actually take that placement or not. And as the Education Minister said this week, students on placements deserve to be able to afford something more nutritious than 2-minute noodles. For Gabby, she explained that this announcement has lifted a whole weight off her shoulders. She feels relief. This announcement means that she can now focus more rather than fearing homelessness and hunger while she trains to help others. Gabby has seen what the old system costs. She explained how a friend of hers who graduated a few years ago had to leave her course for 1 full year to afford to take her paid prac. What should have been a straightforward path through university was not a straightforward path. This was not great for the profession and not great for skill shortages for Australia. This story is far from uncommon. It reflects the reality of paid placement poverty, and we've changed it and we've fixed it.
I thank the member and I call the member for Flynn.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. More than 3 million older Australians are facing a crushing financial blow under this Labor government, with private health insurance premium increases of up to $807 more per year for singles and up to $1,614 more for couples. And why? Because of Labor's $11 billion tax grab targeting private health insurance. For older Australians on fixed incomes who are already struggling with the relentless cost of living crisis, this policy leaves them with a bitter, agonising choice. They are being forced to cut spending on basic daily essentials, downgrade their health cover or give it up entirely. Deputy Speaker, what makes this policy particularly cruel is who it impacts the most. Those who have spent a lifetime sacrificing to keep their private health insurance cover. We are talking about seniors who worked hard, budgeted strictly and sacrificed family holidays, new cars and small everyday luxuries year after year, specifically to ensure they wouldn't be a burden on the public health system in their later years. They paid into their health insurance funds faithfully, in many cases for their entire working lives, believing that their sacrifice would guarantee them a peace of mind when they need it the most in their older years. And now, on fixed pensions, they are being forced and priced out. National Seniors Australia reports that an astonishing 45% of people relying solely on the aged pension hold private health insurance. These aren't wealthy individuals. They are everyday pensioners who did everything right, who are now being forced to abandon the very safety net they spent decades sacrificing to build. Labor's own department admitted in writing that pensioners would be forced to cut back, downgrade or drop their cover under this policy. The Minister for Health originally claimed that only 44,000 pensioners would be affected, and that claim has now been completely blown apart. New polling reveals that almost 40% of seniors in the outer suburban and regional Australia are ready to drop their cover altogether. This isn't just a coalition complaint. State health ministers in Queensland, Tasmania and New South Wales have all sounded the alarm. They know how exactly what happens when hundreds of thousands of seniors are forced out of private cover and flood the public hospital system that is already at breaking point. By stripping away an additional rebate, a 4% cut for those over 65 and an 8% cut for those over 70, Canberra is pulling off a cheap cost shift. The federal government pockets the cash while state emergency departments and public waiting lists pick up the pieces. Private health insurance is a vital buffer for our health network. Why doesn't this Labor government understand the real-world impact of punishing the very people who spent a lifetime contributing to it?
Yeah. I thank the member. I call the member for Bennelong.
Deputy Speaker, in 1876, Lane Cove Public School opened with just 13 students. And last week, the school celebrated their 150th anniversary. It was such an honour to join their celebrations alongside Principal Terry McKinnon, New South Wales Minister for Education Prue Carr, and current and former members of the school community to mark this very special day. And there was plenty on show. The original 1876 classroom displayed old photos, uniforms, badges, trophies and documents. A centenary time capsule from 1976 was unearthed with items and stories that have preserved the school's rare history. The P&C ran a cake stall, barbecue and sold commemorative tea towels and aprons. And special alumni returned as well, Deputy Speaker. Peter Overton from 9 News returned to Lane Cove for the celebration, where he was a student and school captain 55 years ago. Peter reunited with John Notley, a lifetime school P&C member, who is now over 90 years old. And a special video from the one and only Nicole Kidman, a former student, was played where she shared her personal stories about her beloved Lane Cove Public School. Today, 680 students are enrolled, with 48% from a non-English speaking background, and 54 different languages are spoken in family homes. To the present and past families, teachers and students of Lane Cove Public School, congratulations. Thank you for being the reason that this school continues to thrive every day. Whilst it was an honour to celebrate such a huge milestone, I'm deeply saddened also to share some local news, Deputy Speaker. Last week I learnt the passing of Domenico Mick Oliveri. Mick was a beloved member of the Ryde community who will be sorely missed. Mick was cherished, respected and admired in all areas of his life. You'd often see Mick on the sewing machine as one of the expert tailors at Top Ryde Tailors, a business he started 66 years ago. But his life wasn't only just work, he gave back to his community as well. For more than 60 years, Mick devoted his time to the Lady of Grace fraternity, serving as both committee member and treasurer. He led the Rosary group at St Anthony's Catholic Church every Monday, where he shared his passion for faith and prayer with the parish. Mick was widely known for his always giving a helping hand. He organised countless fundraising initiatives and worked tirelessly to bring people together. He offered support to anyone in need, whether it was towards fellow locals in Bennelong or disadvantaged groups outside of Australia. I wish to extend my respects to the Oliveri family, who I know will sorely miss him. He leaves behind Giuseppina Oliveri, his wife of over 65 years, their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. Vale Domenico Oliveri.
I thank the member. I call the member for Casey.
It was an honour to join our local volunteer firefighters and their families at the Montrose Fire Brigade Annual Awards last weekend. Congratulations to Montrose firefighters Mark Dines and Ryan Kimberley on receiving 5-year service awards. To Phil Doyle, Ryan McCormack, Jamie and Liz Peters, congratulations on your 10 years service awards. Peter Carew on 45 years and Rob Ernie on 55 years of service to the Montrose community through the Fire Brigade. Greg Barry, Sally Connor, Alan Hopkins, Stuart McCall and the late Ed Stevens also received the National Medal. And it was an honour to also join the Wonga Park CFA last Friday night to celebrate local volunteers at their annual dinner. And congratulations to Tim Edwards on receiving the 10-year service medal, Reece Keown and Rob Pitcher on receiving 15-year service medals, and Aaron Farr on receiving the 20-year service medal. Congratulations to John Greenwood Smith, OAM, who received the 55-year service medal, life membership and Chief Officer's citation for courage, and we also acknowledge that he received the OAM this year. And I had the privilege of joining the Sassafras Ferny Creek CFA Annual Awards recently, where we congratulated Lieutenant Jeff Horner, who was awarded the 50-year service medal. Rachel Farris Cornwell was presented with the Brigade's prestigious Firefighter of the Year. Peter Leithhead and Michael Levi, who each received Officers' Awards, and the Brigade were recognised with a Chief Officer's Certificate of Commendation for their actions during the June 2021 storms. And I'm looking forward to getting out and celebrating with the Belgrave CFA on Friday night and the Monbulk Fire Brigade on Saturday night. The CFA volunteers give so much to our communities. We're so lucky to have them. And last week, we celebrated Early Childhood Matters Week. And I had the privilege of visiting Mooroolbark Early Learning Centre during Early Childhood Matters Week. It was fantastic to see young minds learning and engaging through play, supported by a team of dedicated teachers and educators. And thank you to Bree and Mel for showing me around and for the great conversation. All around the country, there are early childhood educators like Bree and Mel working tirelessly to give Aussie kids the very best start in life, supporting their development and well-being and laying the foundations for future success. And we know that families know what is best for their children. Choice is so important for families in early learning, making sure that those childcare deserts can be closed in communities like mine and regional communities across the country. And a key way to do that is to give families choice in how they raise their children.
I thank the member and I call the Assistant Minister for Competition, Charities and Treasury.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I rise today to recognise two outstanding constituents of Fenner. Melinda Tynan is retiring after decades of public service. Melinda began her career in the New South Wales Police Force, where she worked directly with people experiencing domestic violence. She was the chief instigator of the first Conference of Australasian Women Police, held in Sydney in 1996, which helped lead to the creation of the Australasian Council of Women in Policing. When the council was incorporated in 1997, Melinda was a founding member and its secretary. In 1998, the ACT Attorney-General appointed her Domestic Violence Project Coordinator and an ex officio member of the ACT Domestic Violence Prevention Council. Her 2000 thesis, Fatal Flaws, examined the policing of violence against women in Australia. She later brought that expertise into the Australian Public Service, working on women's safety and responses to trafficking, forced marriage and family violence. Her daughter Ophelia tells me that Melinda was also among the key advisors who helped develop Australia's first national plan to reduce violence against women and their children. Ophelia described her mother to me as a giant in the field and said she was an extremely proud daughter. After a career spent making women and children safer, Melinda has given her plenty to be proud of. I also congratulate another constituent, Cameron Myers, on winning silver in the men's mile at the Glasgow Commonwealth Games. Cam ran 3 minutes 55 seconds, finishing behind Scotland's Josh Kerr in the event's return to the Commonwealth Games program after 60 years. At just 20, Cam has already built an extraordinary record. He began in Belconnen Little Athletics, aged 6. At 16, he became the second youngest person ever to break 4 minutes for the mile. In 2024, he won World Under-20 silver over 1,500 metres. He's a two-time Australian 1,500 metre champion. This year, Cam has run faster still. He set an Australian indoor record for 3,000 metres, then ran an Australian 1,500 metre record of 3 minutes 28 seconds in Paris. A week later, he won the Bowerman Mile in Eugene in 3 minutes 46 seconds, breaking the Australian and Oceania records. Cam is as modest in person as he is quick on the track. He's coached by my friend Dick Telford, the Australian Institute of Sport's inaugural sports scientist, a pioneering researcher and a generous coach. Cam joined Dick's squad full-time as a teenager, and the results since have been remarkable. Congratulations to Cam on his medal and his records, and to Dick Telford for another successful chapter in a long Canberra career. Yeah.
I thank the Assistant Minister. I call the member for Latrobe.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'd too like to rise today to highlight the tremendous success of the 2026 Commonwealth Games. Athletes from 74 nations and territories came together in Glasgow for the 23rd Games. Australia once again proved why we are one of the greatest sporting nations, I should say the greatest sporting nations, and especially the medal tally was quite incredible. 164 medals, 65 gold, 47 silver, 52 bronze. An incredible achievement. Our swimmers dominated the pool, and it was great to see the athletes do so well, especially in the relays. I couldn't believe the results we saw in the men's and women's relays, which puts us in good steads for the Olympic Games. So congratulations for all involved. But the tragedy of the Commonwealth Games was simply this. As a Victorian, we were so excited about having the opportunity to host the Games in Victoria, and this was the Victorian Labor government's commitment to host the Games, and it would have been so amazing. We heard, as members speaking before, about athletes performing so well. It would have been so nice for family members and friends to go and see athletes go, say, at the MCG and in front of 100,000 crowd. Instead, we saw in Glasgow a very small stadium, and yet they were able to host the Games. And when we have the Melbourne Sports and Aquatics, and I know very well because my daughter's in swimming, that is an Olympic, beautiful pool. The facilities there are absolutely amazing, and yet the Victorian taxpayer paid $589 million under Labor not to host the Games. And you know what was even worse is when we had our good friends from Scotland holding up signs thanking the Victorian taxpayer for funding the Games. You wouldn't believe that, Madam Deputy Speaker. They were thanking us. The compensation we paid, Victorians paid, obviously it's gone into debt, for Scotland to host the Games. And the stupid thing was because the incompetent state Labor Party tried to put more events and tried to put events in the regions in Melbourne, build facilities, and yet we've got Melbourne being the home of sport. We've got the Melbourne Cricket Ground, as I said, MSAC, all these incredible venues such as Olympic Parks. We could have easily held the Games there. So with the November election coming up, this is just simply another reason why we need to vote out Labor, because rather than being the sporting capital of the world, they turned us into the sporting joke of the world. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker.
I thank the member, and I call the member for Tagney.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Earlier this month, constituents from the Indian Australian community in Tagney reached out to me about some of the racist abuse that has been said to them. There are people out there propagating division and hatred. These have serious consequences in my Tagney community. With 162 different ancestry, this division is damaging our harmony. I know many of them do not want to speak out in public because they are afraid it will get worse or they will be ignored. As a former police officer, I always advise them to report to police. As a migrant, I also understand why people might not want to do so. But I also do know that we all need to stand up and speak out against this type of bad behavior. I reflected on these conversations and also thought of recent Tagney's events that brought people together. In June, I attended the opening of the Making Home Under Southern Skies exhibition at Yanga Maya Wireless Hill Museum. This exhibit looked at the story of Chinese Western Australia from early 1830 to the present day. With Tagney home to the large Chinese Australian communities, it was meaningful to have this exhibition held here in Tagney. Another two events in Tagney show how we are looking after the traditions that matter to our elderly and supporting our future generation connecting with their ancestry. I joined celebration for the Dumpling Festival held by Chonghua Association and congratulate the Mukamaya Tamil Language School on their 10th anniversary. Recently, the Indian Society of Western Australia opened their doors to the Tangney and Burke community. As my colleague Matt Kioff and I, we host a multicultural leaders forum with Minister Burke and Minister Ali. There were powerful contributions from everyone who attended on that day. But the word of Dr. Paul from the Baha'i community in Melbourne have stayed with me. He shared with me how he get to know his neighbors, not only by their names, but the football team they cheer for, where they work, and what mattered to them most. He spent the time truly trying to understand his neighbors. This is a powerful reminder how we all can contribute to the harmony of our community. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I thank the member and I call the member for Fairfax.
Thanks.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. This country needs a plan, and it needs to be run by a political party that has a plan. Now, the Liberal National Party, we do have a plan, and we're out there communicating with the Australian public about it. We have a plan to lower taxes. We have a plan for cheaper power. We have a plan for less migration and more homes. We have a plan to have an Australian government that puts the Australian people first. That's our plan. Because our plan as a Liberal National Party is to put the Australian people at the centre, to give them hope, to unleash aspiration, to build a country that is worthy not just of those upon whose shoulders we stand today, but of the next generation, to ensure that tomorrow's Australians will live in an even greater country. And we can do that. We can do that with a united team that we have and with a solid plan. Now, this plan is every bit as relevant to the people of the Sunshine Coast as it is to people right across Australia. When it comes to lower taxes, people of the Sunshine Coast right now are hurting. Now, we might indeed be the lifestyle capital of the country, and we are. But the Sunshine Coast residents are still amidst a cost of living crisis. And the only thing that we've seen in the recent budget from the Albanese government is to increase taxes, whether it be on trust, capital gains, negative gearing, you name it. The Australian people, the Sunshine Coast residents, do not deserve higher taxes. Our plan as a Liberal National Party is to lower those taxes. Then when it comes to cheaper power, I've had the great privilege of recent weeks knocking on doors of small businesses across the electorate of Fairfax. I've had the great privilege of attending multiple Chamber of Commerce meetings. I'm talking to businesses that get up every single morning, their owners, their workers, to serve the local community. And they are copying it because of costs. One of those costs are power. It is electricity in particular. You know, electricity prices have gone up 40%. Gas, 40% under this government. Cheaper power will help our small businesses on the Sunshine Coast. That's our plan. Less migration and more houses. If there's any part of Australia that has felt the housing crisis, it is the Sunshine Coast. A beautiful part of the world. And yet we have homelessness running out of control. We have long-standing residents having to leave the region because the rents have gone through the roof or they simply cannot afford to buy. And that is because this government has driven supply down. We need to ensure that we actually cap migration to new builds, a sensible plan that will deliver. And this is how we put Australians first and the people of the Sunshine Coast first.
Thank you. The member for Haslup.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Between 2001 and 2025, there were 2,305 fatalities on our rail networks. 1,781 of those were suicides. This absolutely validates the direct and indirect investment in our mental health, which is in excess of $14 billion nationally, is so vital. But it also highlights another matter. As part of our Rail Safety Week, understanding the importance of ensuring that everyone can understand the impact that fatalities on our rail network have, not obviously just on the victims, and the number of suicides is obviously extraordinary but there are other causes too, from accidents at rail crossings, from trespassing, and from just unfortunate incidents where the people haven't been able to see the lighting, which is being fixed, as I understand now, with new measures, particularly in Western Australia, for lighting on carriages. But these 2,305 fatalities needs that highlight and focus, and I'm grateful for the opportunity this week for the Rail Safety Foundation to have had time in the Parliament to highlight to members of Parliament the importance of rail in Australia, but also the importance of improving safety. In May this year, we had an accident at the Meadow Street crossing in Guildford in my electorate in Hasluck, where a truck collided with a train. The damage it caused was extraordinary. Incredibly, there were no fatalities. There were 6 injuries, though, including 2 toddlers. The driver had a trainee with him in the train. The damage, when you look at the photograph, it's just remarkable how there were not more serious injuries of a physical kind, but we know that there will now be mental injuries. My father was a train driver. He spoke to me when I was a young girl when of his experience of having, in this case for him too, it was also a suicide, the impact that and the toll it took from him, because you see it happening. It takes 14 football fields to stop a train. So for a driver, for the passengers, the emotional toll that will take on them, as well as the families of the victims, can't be understated. To the people that have to then clean the train, clean the tracks. This is a trauma that we can actually work to fix collectively. So I thank the Rail Safety Foundation. I thank the RTP Union for the work that they do to support the drivers. And I support bodies like the PTA and the Perth Transport bodies that provides the wraparound support to passengers as well. Thank you.
In accordance with Standing Order 193, the time for members' constituency statements has concluded, and I call the clerk.
Committee and Delegation Business, Order of the Day number 1, Standing Committee on Education, Security and Prosperity in Asia, Building Asia Capability in Australia through the education system and beyond. Resumption of debate on the motion that the House take note of the report.
The question is that the document be noted. The member for Tangney.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, when I was young, my family was very poor. We were a Chinese-Malaysian family that worked as a rubber tapper in Muar, Malaysia. My language at home was Chinese, but on my daily walk to help my family at a rubber plantation, I would walk past home of many Malay families. One of those families took me in and treated me as one of their own. The family fed me, the kids and I became good friends, and we share many happy memories together. They spoke Malay, I spoke Mandarin, Chinese. So how did we communicate? Well, I learned Malay. That's also something the family taught me. As we play and act together, I also learn about Malay culture and Malay customs. I may not be of Malay heritage, but I can speak like a Malay and I eat like Malay. I understand what it's like to be Malay. Years later, as an adult, I own a business with operation throughout Malaysia. Some of that success was due to my capabilities I had of Malay language, culture, and people. When you understand people, you can connect with them. You can build trust and respect. You can build relationships that are deep and long-lasting. Madam Speaker, I speak in support of the report of Security and Prosperity in Asia, building Asia capability in Australia through the education system and beyond. In my electorates of Tangney, I have Alberta Primary School that offer a well-known embedded Mandarin language program. From pre-primary to year 6, students take Mandarin language classes, but also receive science, measurement, and geometry lessons in Mandarin. Many of the students do have Chinese ancestry, but there are also families in the Alberta catchment that do not have any exposure to Mandarin prior to starting school. For this family where Mandarin is not a home language, having this greater exposure is especially critical if we want more students to be learning Mandarin. Tangney is also home to Rossmoy Senior High School, who offer Mandarin and Japanese languages classes, as well as a gifted and talented program in these languages. While some students attending Alberta study Mandarin as secondary students at Rossmoy Senior High School, others who do not reside in the Rossmoy catchment cannot because Chinese is not offered at their catchment school. For native English speakers, Chinese is a difficult language to learn. Basic reading proficiency in Mandarin requires at least 3,000 characters. On average, it takes 2 to 5 years of full-time study to reach to advanced proficiency. Madam Speaker, one of the report's recommendations is to work towards bilingual Mandarin-Chinese education at secondary level in every catchment that already have a bilingual Mandarin primary. Another recommendation is to designate priority language of Mandarin, Indonesian, Hindi, and Japanese that would attract direct Commonwealth investment through measures such as Asia Leader Schools and Language Hubs. I know many constituents in Tangney will be supportive of these recommendations. Parents often approach me and ask for solutions like what is being recommended. They see the value of developing fluency in Asian languages, and having invested heavily in language learning in primary school, they are frustrated when their children cannot continue this study in their secondary schools. More than 70 countries or regions have introduced Chinese language in their education system. Many education systems see the value of having Chinese language as part of their curriculum, such as Saudi Arabia and United Emirates. And in Malaysia, Chinese and Tamil are taught with Malay and English throughout their whole education system. Asia accounts for more than 60% of Australia's two-way trade, but employers do not necessarily see the value in recruiting or rewarding those who have experience and capability with Asia. Some employers see language skill as important, but many see a person's ability to speak a second language, a third, or even a fourth language as something interesting rather than a key skill. Language is important, but it does not tell the whole story. Capability means more than language. It is an understanding and respect that is developed through deep cultural study and often significant time spent in the country, not once, but over many years. It has been able to understand without needing cultural translation, and it is about being able to build relationship. Both public and private sectors employers need to be better understand the value of someone who can build bridges across cultures. Around 80% of Business Council of Australia members company, Business Council of Australia members company, have established international operations. While we acknowledge the importance of Australia's trade with Asia, how many of us actually have Asia experience? And for people who do have Asia experience, how is this skill measured and valued by their employers? We need to better value these capabilities as a strategic assets. It is alarming to see that school and university language program, in-country immersion programs, and university courses in Asian studies are all declining. These courses are all part of how Australia and Australians can develop their capability with Asia, and yet the inquiry heard expert witnesses say that projecting the functional extinction of the teaching of Indonesian in Australian schools by 2031. Fewer than 500 of nearly 1 million domestic university students study Indonesian, at a time where Australians' understanding of Indonesia is of no greater importance. Australia and India establish and celebrate the 6th anniversary of Comprehensive Strategy Partnership this year. There's a great demand for the study of South Asian languages. In my own electorates of Tangney, there are 14 different community language schools, with half of them teaching a South Asian language. But at the same time, South Asian languages are barely taught in school or universities. This is also an issue that has been raised with me by Tangney constituents. My community is asking for high-quality learning in Asian languages with a pathway from primary to secondary to post-secondary in a way that is structured and provide real opportunities to develop fluency and also that deep understanding that is so key to this capability. This report offers many recommendations to support a sustainable strategy to build that capability. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. The question is that the document be noted, and I call the member for line.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. This is a completely last-minute decision to speak, but an important one. And I welcome the report of the Standing Committee on Education, Security and Prosperity in Asia, building Asia capability in Australia through the education system and beyond. And the reason that I've chosen to speak on this particular report is my own experience, both as a university student and also in my professional career. I was an European humanities student at school, and I studied French and German, but for a couple of reasons, when I went to university, I chose to study Korean language. And there are two reasons for that. One is that I have a goddaughter who was adopted from Korea. And my hope was that one day, if she ever wanted to go to Korea and learn about the country of her heritage, that I could go and that I could help her engage with the country. And secondly, I had a lot of friends at the time. I mean, I'm a Gen Xer. I finished high school in 1989, and a lot of my friends and colleagues at the time were studying Japanese. And I had this sense that, this is well before K-pop and K-drama, but I had this sense, that Korea was a country that Australia needed to deepen its relationship with. So I chose to study Korean language at the Australian National University, and I have to say that despite the fact that some 30 years later that my Korean is now not much beyond being able to say Mekju Chuseo and order a beer and Ajima Baliwa, come here, I need a beer quickly, I still very much value the relationship and that experience that I had. Indeed, I had the opportunity through a scholarship, the Australian Asian Languages Scholarship, to actually go and study for a year at Sogang Dahakyo, at Sogang University, where not only did I spend time learning Korean but in a language school, but I also had the opportunity to actually study with Koreans in the classroom. And this is the sort of, I think, experience that is critical and a key point of the report. And then in my own professional life, when I was the CEO of the Australian Livestock Exporters Council, part of my job was spending time in Indonesia, Vietnam and Malaysia. And I came to that job quite a turbulent time in the industry after Labor's ban on live cattle to Indonesia. I was responsible to help bridge the divide between our countries and rebuild the trade and help our customers understand the animal welfare requirements that Australia was placing on Australian exporters through the Exporter Supply Chain Assurance System. And so, you know, when you go and have those conversations, business to business, people to people, it's not just about trade numbers. It's actually about having a deeper understanding of the culture. You know, one of the things I learnt with Korean is you can't directly translate from English to Korean if you don't understand the cultural context in which you are making, you know, having to explain and get your point across. So I think, you know, as I say, it is, when we're engaging with Asia, it's far more between numbers on a trade balance sheet. It means understanding languages, cultures, history and politics, and it means building relationships and networks. And wherever possible, it means actually spending the time in the region. And I'm incredibly grateful now as a Member of Parliament to come to this place, having that experience and that exposure, having studied Korean language at the ANU, having spent time in Indonesia, Malaysia and Vietnam. The report describes you know, this capability as a combination of cultural knowledge, language skills and professional networks that allow Australians to engage effectively with our region. And that resonates very strongly with me. When you learn another country's language, you inevitably learn much more than words. You begin to understand how people think, how their history has shaped them, how their society works and how they see Australia and the world. And that understanding became so practical to me, and again, as I say, to bring to my work here in the Parliament. Those experiences reinforce for me that successful engagement in Asia depends on relationships, trust and cultural understanding. You cannot build those things from Canberra or Wauchope or Taree or tea gardens. You have to spend time in country, have to listen, have to understand how business is done, and it's done quite differently. And I learnt that very clearly, particularly in my engagement with Vietnamese cattle importers, trying to explain the Exporter Supply Chain Assurance System and why Australia was implementing it, how decisions are made and what matters to the people that you're dealing with. As I say, in the live export industry, that meant working very directly with businesses, officials and communities across Southeast Asia. It meant understanding not just commercial arrangements, but local expectations, cultural sensitivities and the importance of long-term relationships. That experience taught me that Australian businesses are at their strongest in Asia when we turn up, build trust and invest in understanding our partners. That's difficult to replicate in a classroom and impossible to replace with an app or an AI translation tool. Indeed, the committee made precisely that point. Technology can make translation easier, but it cannot substitute for the cultural understanding and human relationships that allow diplomats, businesses and governments to operate effectively. That is why I'm concerned by some of the figures contained in this report. In 2023, only 3.3% of Australian Year 12 students studied one of the previously designated priority Asian languages, Japanese, Chinese or Indonesian. Australia ranked second last among 64 countries for the proportion of Year 10 students learning a second language, and only 38% of Australians speak 2 or more languages, compared with an OECD average of 68%. The situation at university is no better. The report found Asian language enrolments are at an historic low. Only around 1% of domestic university students were studying an Asian language in 2023, while enrolments at the ANU have fallen substantially across all of the 16 Asian languages it teaches. That certainly concerns me as an alumni of Asian language study at ANU, an incredible program that ANU has invested in over many decades. because there's a practical economic dimension to this. Australia's a trading nation. Our farmers, miners, regional businesses produce some of the best products in the world. But future prosperity will increasingly depend on our ability not simply to sell into Asian markets, but to understand those markets and build enduring relationships with them, which, as I say, I've seen myself. A business person who understands the language, customs and commercial culture of Indonesia, Korea, Malaysia or Vietnam certainly has an advantage. A diplomat or a defence official who understands the history and perspectives of our neighbours is better equipped to represent Australia's interest. And indeed, on a recent trip to East Timor as part of the Australian Regional Leadership Initiative, I worked with some of our officials from the Australian Embassy in East Timor who spoke some Tetum, and that made such a difference when we were up in remote villages just to increase that engagement, which made the experience for me and I think those other MPs and senators who were on the delegation, we got so much more out of the visit. And a young Australian who's lived and studied in Asia comes home with knowledge, networks and experience that can benefit this country for decades. That's why I particularly support the report's emphasis on immersion and in-country experience. The committee recommends continuing support for a longer-term language-focused study through the new Colombo Plan and considering opportunities for postgraduate students and researchers spending time in Asia. My own experience, and I'll finish on this point, tells me that this is money well spent. Giving Australians, young Australians, the opportunity to learn the language, to go and practice it in country, from just ordering the food to trying to attend a lecture, learning about Korean political economy. And I tell you what, that was a hell of a class and one of the most difficult language learning experiences of my life. But I learnt so much, not only about Korea, but also about the importance of this investment in young people for the future of building our relationship with Asia. Thank you.
Thank you. I understand the member for Pearce would like to present a copy of their speech for incorporation into Hansard in accordance with the resolution agreed to on 6 November 2025.
Thank you.
Thank you. The question is that the document be noted, and I call the member for Solomon.
Thanks, Deputy Speaker, and I'd like to thank the member for Pearce for her contribution and the former member for giving a very short notice and quite excellent contribution to this important debate. Deputy Speaker, we all know that Australia faces its most challenging strategic environment since the Second World War. We hear that a lot, and I think there's agreement about the situation and the times that we find ourselves in. And as the inquiries report, that being the inquiry into building Asia capability in Australia through the education system and beyond, expertly chaired by the member for Gellibrand. But as that report states, and I quote, "Our near neighbours in Southeast Asia are seeking new partners to protect their sovereignty and agency. To succeed in this new world, Australia's leaders and institutions need a deeper understanding of our region's languages, cultures, histories, societies and economies. Asia capability is now a vital sovereign capability." End quote. And Deputy Speaker, I know this from personal experience to be true. Like the former speaker, I studied languages at ANU, Indonesian, not Korean, but kerana saya bisa bahasa Indonesia, saya tahu kita bisa bekerja bersama dan tambah hal beli kuliah tetun ita beli servisu hamotuk hawateni. Just the translation for Hansard in Indonesian and Tetum is, because I can speak some Indonesian and some Tetum, I know that we can work together. In February of this year, the Prime Minister and the President of the Republic of Indonesia, Prabowo Subianto, signed the historic Australia-Indonesia Treaty on Common Security, reflecting the close friendship, partnership and deep trust between Australia and Indonesia. The treaty takes our defence cooperation to a new level. Indonesia's status as a key security partner has been solidified with this treaty, supporting bilateral coordination on supply chains, maritime security and enabling faster responses to potential regional crises. Australia and Indonesia also agreed to strengthen two-way investment through a memorandum of understanding between the Australian Government and the Indonesian Sovereign Wealth Fund, Danatara. The agreement will increase cooperation in information sharing and help identify opportunities for increased two-way investment, enhancing our shared economic security and resilience. It builds on work to deepen Australia's economic engagement with Indonesia, which is of enormous value to both countries and is a key part of Australia's broader effort to diversify our economy through growing markets in Southeast Asia. And one of the key trading commodities is in live cattle. And we support the live export industry 100%. As the Prime Minister has said, I've come to our region first because our region comes first. I am here in Indonesia because no relationship is more important to Australia than this one. And no nation is more important to the prosperity, security and stability of the Indo-Pacific than Indonesia." End quote. Australia is committed to boosting trade and investment in the region through Invested, Australia's Southeast Asia Economic Strategy to 2040. The strategy is supporting Australian businesses to take advantage of trade and investment opportunities in Indonesia. This is the fastest growing region of the world in human history, and Indonesia is central to that growth. Already the fourth largest nation in the world by population and projected to be the fifth largest economy in the world by the end of the next decade. There are both significant economic and defence opportunities in our bilateral relationship with Indonesia and a clear ambition of both leaders, both governments, to realise these. This position of Indonesia as one of our key partners has been reinforced by Indonesia's role ensuring the supply of fertiliser for Australian farmers and has provided us with crucial support during the current disruptions in the Middle East. The Albanese Labor government has worked with industry and the Indonesian government to facilitate 250,000 tonnes of additional agricultural grade urea for Australian farmers from Indonesia. And this demonstrates a close partnership and friendship between Australia and Indonesia. However, Deputy Speaker, we're at risk of losing something vital to that connection, and that is our ability to speak the Bahasa Indonesian language. Knowing some Indonesian language allows me to have conversations with Indonesian friends and colleagues, and through my adult life this has not only been good for me, but it has been good for our country. So looking through the lens specifically of Indonesia and the Bahasa language, we indeed are facing a crisis. Across Australia, the study of Bahasa Indonesia is in free fall. Australia has had a long history of teaching Indonesian studies, leading the world in it since the 1950s. Though it still survives among primary schools that have made Indonesian mandatory, and I thank those schools for their wisdom, the number of students learning the language in secondary school has greatly declined, with the number of Year 12 students having halved in a single generation. Recently, I've been contacted by academics expressing deep concerns about the proposed changes to Deakin University's language program. These changes include downgrading the Indonesian language from a major to a minor, abolishing the Diploma of Languages, and perhaps most concerningly, moving all language provision from in-person to online. These changes would severely diminish the learning experience of language students and have a significant impact on achieving any level of language fluency. It also flies in the face of this Parliamentary Committee's findings that we are at a critical juncture for our country's Asia capability. Now, Deputy Speaker, these proposed changes are an example of a much broader trend. And I'll go on to discuss that in a second. But before I move on from Deakin University, I want to give a quick example of someone, one of my younger brothers, who studied Bahasa Indonesia at Deakin, went on to get some work experience at the Quicksilver Surf Company in Bali, but because he spoke Indonesian, he went on to have a wonderful first part of his career with that company, and then moved on to other companies where he's just done so well because he's a good bloke, but also because he spoke Bahasa Indonesia. And you'll find a lot of people around our country that will have similar experiences. But since 2001, the number of school students learning Indonesian has declined by 10,000 each year. University enrolments have dropped by more than 60% since their peak. Alarmingly, we're seeing respected schools in the Northern Territory, a jurisdiction of our country that I'm proud to represent, Territorians, and we are so close to Indonesia, but still there, respected schools like Essington and Haileybury and other schools and universities across our country are considering ending their Indonesian programs altogether. And I've spoken with them about this and hope that they see the wisdom of continuing with Indonesian. With the opportunities I've outlined today, my younger brother being one, my experiences, but so many other Australians, this decrease in Australian students, and whether they be at primary school, secondary school or at university, having less opportunity to study Bahasa, is happening at exactly the wrong time. And that is why our government has committed to financial assistance to 600 community language centres and provided record public school funding to get more kids through to Year 12 in their language and studying languages. We're investing in reversing the decline in languages and Asian literacy with a focus on Indonesian and other priority languages. So this isn't just about classroom learning, is my main point. It's actually about our national capacity. There are many good programs that have been in existence in the past but are now no longer, and I think we should be looking at them and continuing to find those community-to-community approaches, those business-to-business approaches, subnational engagements, as well as the important work that we do at a national level and in a parliament-to-parliament level with our near neighbours in ASEAN. Australia has always wanted to influence the Indo-Pacific, but we also need to start making tangible impact that comes from knowing our region better. Thanks, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you. The question is that the document be noted. I call the member for Banks.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. My career prior to entering Parliament included time working in education policy, and I'm proud to serve as a member of the House Standing Committee on Education who conducted this inquiry. At the outset, I'd like to add my thanks to the committee staff who do so much exceptional work and made it possible for the members of the committee to complete this inquiry. I would also like to thank the many community members, academics, education leaders and interested stakeholders in this space who shared their expertise, knowledge and experience with us and contributed significantly to the conclusions of the report. Australia faces the most complex strategic environment since the Second World War, and the challenges it brings are happening on our doorstep in the Asia-Pacific. Our national interests in Asia are unique, and we cannot necessarily rely on other countries to share our priorities. Our capacity to express our own perspectives and assert our own national interests relies on a sovereign capability to engage with our neighbours in the region. What was abundantly clear over the course of our inquiry is that building our Asia capability is of profound importance for our security and economic success in the region. And we have never needed this understanding of both language and culture more than we do right now. Deputy Speaker, as has been said many times in this place, Indonesia is a pivotal partner of Australia in our region. As a result, it is of significant importance that we develop and maintain an understanding of Indonesia's language and culture amongst our diplomats, business people and communities to facilitate our effective engagement. As the member for Gellibrand noted when he presented the report to the House as chair of the committee, Indonesia was the first non-Indigenous language spoken in Australia via the Makassar traders interacting with First Nations people on our northern shores. Unfortunately, there has been a concerning trend in Australia's Bahasa Indonesia capability. There are currently less than 500 university students studying Bahasa, less than there was under the Whitlam government 50 years ago, when Australia's population was less than half of what it is today. Indeed, unless something changes, it is projected that Indonesian language teaching is at risk of being functionally extinct in Australia in just 5 years' time. This is an ominous sign for our ability to engage with one of our most important partners, with submissions noting that a recent DFAT graduate recruitment round did not include a single Indonesian speaker. The pipeline of Indonesia-capable members of our public service and diplomatic corps is at risk of drying up. While this Labor government is making strides in our relationship with Indonesia, signing the Jakarta Treaty, more and more these milestones are being met in spite of a waning capability rather than being because of a strong capacity. Past Indonesia presidents have made it clear that Australian students learning Bahasa Indonesian, as well as Indonesian students studying here in Australian universities, was integral to our bilateral partnership. The committee recommends that the government treat Indonesian language schools' intervention package as a first-order priority, as well as designating Indonesian as a priority language, both measures that will be important in addressing this decline. Further, Australia has one of the largest and fastest growing economies nearby in our region, in India. In just 6 years on from signing of the Comprehensive Strategic Partnership, we are well positioned to benefit from greater collaboration on science, technology, defence industry, agriculture, education and tourism. This opportunity brings with it a greater incentive for Australians to seek work in key innovative industries or in outward-facing public service departments to understand the nuances of South Asian culture and language. However, the various South Asian languages are barely taught in either schools or tertiary institutions across our country. Indeed, in Australia, the teaching of these languages is largely done by diaspora communities and families rather than larger education institutions. Much like Indonesian, the report recommends that Hindi is made a priority language. Finally, Deputy Speaker, our relationship with China remains crucial. This government, led by the Minister for Foreign Affairs, has ensured that our relationship is characterised by respectful dialogue that promotes active engagement but also defends our national interests. In order to continue to support this important relationship, Australia needs a strong expertise in Chinese language, Chinese politics, economics, history, and all of its nuances. The National Foundation for Australia-China Relations has outlined that this expertise is in significant need of expansion, as currently it is held by a narrow group of subject matter experts. Deputy Speaker, the recommendations of the report are clear. Firstly, a 10-year National Asia Capability Strategy that recognises the importance of sovereign, homegrown capability. The committee further recommended that the strategy designate Mandarin, Indonesian, Hindi and Japanese as priority languages to attract Commonwealth investment and other measures. A number of the report's recommendations focus on how government can put students on the path to further study and success through targeted reform and investment in primary and secondary schools. One of the standout recommendations in this group of reforms or proposed reforms is working with the states and territories to encourage students to study one of the priority languages in Year 12 by rewarding those who complete their course with a 5-point ATAR bonus and pathways to university credit recognition, with guardrails to encourage genuine language attainment. This was based on evidence we heard about some of the concerns individuals had when deciding on whether to learn a language as part of their studies. This sits alongside programs to build our language-capable teaching workforce by helping existing teachers with knowledge of certain languages to upskill in order to teach students formally, and ensuring new members of the teaching workforce have Asian language skills by designating places in the Commonwealth Teaching Scholarships Program to individuals with a specialisation in priority languages, and building the skills of both existing and pre-service teachers through an Asian language intensive program that builds specialisations. The report also suggests reforms to the tertiary education system to recognise the need to develop Asia capability, establish a network of Asian language hubs to guarantee the availability of courses, and prioritise government funding for higher degree research with a focus on Asia, amongst many other reforms. Deputy Speaker, I want to conclude with a reflection. I mentioned at the start of my contribution that I worked in education policy previously, but early in my career, I also spent time serving as an Australian diplomat. My time at the department gave me so many incredible experiences, including engaging with countries across the Asia Pacific. I can say from personal experience that Asia capability is pivotal to ensuring Australia is able to effectively engage with our neighbours. So many of our diplomats are genuine subject matter experts, shining examples of what Asia capability looks like in practice. But what is consistent is the starting point: early engagement and interest in Asia. Both our current and most recent former ambassadors to Indonesia can trace their career back to an exchange semester in Indonesia as young students. They now stand at the forefront of our engagement with one of our most important strategic partners. We have so many talented young people who are capable of building that expertise to be the future of our regional engagement, but we must make sure the system allows them to reach that potential. This is what this report emphasises, and I'm pleased to be part of a government that both recognises its importance and is willing to meet the challenges we face head-on.
Thank you. The question is that the document be noted, and I call the Assistant Minister for Competition, Charities and Treasury.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I have to say what a pleasure it is to be speaking in this debate after the member for Banks, Zee Soon, and just before the members for Reid, Sally Situ and Menzies, Gabrielle Ng. The Labor caucus has become a better caucus in the 16 years that I've served in it, and one of the ways it's become better is not only your entry into the caucus, Deputy Speaker, but also the greater diversity that we now have in our caucus, a caucus which now looks more like the community that it serves. When I was 5, I briefly attended a primary school in Banda Aceh in the north of Sumatra. Our lessons were conducted in Indonesian, and much of the school day consisted of learning nation-building songs, because the national government wanted to ensure that all Achenese thought of themselves as Indonesian first and Achenese second. We played in the muddy playground, and my mother recalls of the time that the sole white child in the class was also the only child whose white shirt came home brown at the end of every day. My father, Michael Lee AM, was working at Sri Kulio University, helping strengthen social science research across Indonesian universities and Islamic institutes. My mother was beginning her research on Achenese crafts, which turned into a book, Tangan-Tangan Trumpel, The Hands of Time, and then on Indonesian education, the Pancasila principles that became her doctoral thesis. We lived in Aceh for 2 years and in Jakarta for a year. And that helped shape how I see our region and the value of Australia engaging with the world. Australia is at its best when we see multiculturalism as a strength and international engagement as a quality. We benefit from those person-to-person links which allow Australians to be more secure, to be more economically prosperous, and to enjoy so much of what the region has to offer through our outbound tourism and through the benefits that inbound tourism brings to Australia in jobs and prosperity. The government has placed the Indo-Pacific at the centre of our foreign policy. The Prime Minister chose Indonesia for his first bilateral visit after the 2022 election. Foreign Minister Wong set herself the task of visiting every ASEAN country except Myanmar in her first year, along with every member of the Pacific Islands Forum. And since we came to office, Australian ministers have made more than 140 visits to Southeast Asia, including 20 by the Prime Minister and 31 by the Foreign Minister. The PM's attended every summit with ASEAN leaders. The Foreign Minister has attended every ASEAN Foreign Ministers meeting. Showing up is a statement of intent in our region. We have also invited the region to Australia, hosting the ASEAN-Australia Special Summit in Melbourne in 2024, marking 50 years since Australia became ASEAN's first dialogue partner, and creating the largest diplomatic gathering Australia had hosted in more than a decade. We have continued to engage with the region through the Jakarta Treaty signed this year, the Treaty on Common Security, the third Australia-India annual summit held in Melbourne last month, in which Prime Minister Modi visited Australia and agreed to expand the comprehensive strategic partnership and pursue fresh areas of economic cooperation. Australia has supported Timor-Leste's accession as ASEAN's 11th member and stabilised the relationship with China while protecting Australian interests and without compromising what matters to Australians. Our foreign policy is also strengthened through our strong engagement with First Nations Australians, a point that I remember former Foreign Minister Bob Carr making to me, that when you engage in international meetings, how your domestic policies, and particularly your policies as they relate to First Nations people, are taken into account in how other nations engage. Asia accounts for some 60% of our two-way trade, and we benefit from Asia being such a fast-growing region and from our engagement in the region. And it's in that context that the government commissioned the House of Representatives Standing Committee on Education to complete a report titled Security and Prosperity in Asia, Building Australia's Asia Capability. I'd commend the member for Gellibrand, Tim Watts, for his leadership in this report. It received some 195 submissions and held 11 public hearings. It defines Asia capability broadly, including language proficiency and cultural literacy, country knowledge and regional experience. And its main argument is that Asia capability is a sovereign capability, one that Australia can exercise in its own right. There are some really troubling statistics in the report. Domestic university enrolments in Southeast Asian languages fell 75% between 2005 and 2024. Of Australia's 1 million domestic university students, just 500 are studying Indonesian. At the Year 12 level, enrolments in Indonesian fell from 1,161 in 2010 to 486 in 2024. I confess that my own Bahasa has faded over the years, though I do sometimes like to remind my children that while English just has the word hot, Indonesian has panas, meaning hot in temperature, and pedas, meaning spicy. That can help us at dinner. It doesn't help that my Indonesian proficiency is sadly unequal to that of the 500 Australians who are studying at Australian universities. We have the example of great scholars such as Herb Feith and Jamie Mackey whose work built stronger ties. But we need more of that kind of Indonesian engagement. The problem comes too in China expertise. In the 5 years to 2021, only 17 students completed honours in Chinese studies with language. And among more than 2,300 postgraduate coursework programs offered by Australian universities, only 21 include an Asia-focused specialisation. Hindi is taught at only 2 Australian universities, despite the fact that Australia's Indian diaspora is around 1 million people, including a terrific community in my electorate of Fenner. The report recommends stronger pathways through schools and university language hubs supported by better national data. It understands that while AI translation is getting better, it doesn't bring the cultural literacy that bilingualism does. It acknowledges how important it is to have school exchange or university placements. A homestay can create those relationships and memories that can sustain years of study. The report also recognised the way in which Australian institutions can sometimes overlook expertise that is already inside their workplace. Employees notice who gets promoted based on their language skills or their regional networks that sit outside their formal job description. The report also notes that while Asian language learning is declining at school and university level, we have a great strength in our community language schools. In 2023, 631 community language schools taught more than 100 languages to over 100,000 students. I see in my own electorate the terrific work that community language schools are being done, but that is not translated into formal skills recognitions and into community teachers having workable pathways into qualified classroom teaching. We need to see more Australian business leaders championing Australian capability in position descriptions. We need to see more board members asking whether regional strategy draws on people with genuine country knowledge. We need to have universities and employers maintaining a closer conversation about demand, which allows students to see clear pathways into great jobs as a result of studying Indonesian or Hindi. We need to support more Asian Australian staff into senior roles through peak bodies such as exist in the legal services sector. Organisations such as AsiaLink, with whom I spoke last Friday, are doing a power of good in building these skills across the region. When I sat in that Banda Aceh classroom, my understanding of Indonesian came through songs and stories. Today, we need that expertise building through business ties, and this terrific report is a great place to start.
Thank you. The member for Reid.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. And when I was younger, I had to, with a lot of obligation on my part and no sense of joy, trek off to Chinese school because it was something that my parents felt very strongly about. I hated it and resisted it, and therefore my Mandarin language skills have been stuck at the age of 8. I have now inflicted that same chore on my son, and every Friday afternoon after school I drive him to Chinese school, and he is also just as a reluctant a Chinese student as I was. But it was important that I went to Chinese school. It is important that he goes to Chinese school, and we are trying to foster a love of the language with him, but it is one of the most frustrating languages to learn and speak, but we're trying, and we try because it is important for our family. It's important that he can speak to his grandparents, but it's also important that he has a strong connection to his heritage, and that is why we will continue to persist every Friday afternoon. And shortly, a few decades after a very petulant Sally was trying to avoid Chinese school, I lived in Beijing in 2008, and I wish I had paid more attention in Chinese school. But it was during that time that I really understood the power of having that understanding of the country and its cultures and traditions, the power of that for Australia, and the ability to bridge cultures, the ability to have a shared understanding of each other, but also the ability to bring the best of both worlds. And it was an incredible time to be living in China, and it is a memory that I will always treasure, and it is one that we hope my son will get an opportunity to be part of as well. And it is incredible, and the member for Fenner had remarked about the diversity of our caucus, and I am very proud to be part of an extraordinary Labor government which has a majority female federal government, but also incredible diversity in our caucus, and to get to sit alongside my friends and good colleagues, member for Banks who spoke earlier, the member for Tangi who speaks an incredible array of languages, the member for Holt, for Swan, for Menzies, everyone who comes into this place with different backgrounds and experiences. It is a real privilege for me to get to serve alongside them. But of course, the original, the OG, Senator Wong, someone who I have looked up to for a really long time, and the first Asian-born minister our country has had. It is wonderful to have her as our foreign minister. And that is in the great Labor tradition. We are a party that has always sought to build close relations with our neighbours, and we have done that for over half a century now. And it was Prime Minister Gough Whitlam who established diplomatic relations with China in 1972. It was Prime Minister Bob Hawke who drove the creation of APEC. It was Prime Minister Paul Keating who said that our engagement with the region has to be uncompromising, unfailing and tenacious. And it was Prime Minister Kevin Rudd, our first Mandarin-speaking Prime Minister, who puts my Mandarin to shame, who said that Australia was fundamentally enmeshed in Asia. And it was the Gillard Labor government that produced the Asian Century White Paper, setting out our national plan for engagement with Asia. So from Prime Ministers Whitlam to Hawke and Keating to Rudd and Gillard, and now to Prime Minister Albanese, ably assisted by Foreign Minister Penny Wong, you know that this government has invested in our relationship with our region, with our neighbours in Asia, and you have seen the extraordinary amount of effort and time that has been put into those relationships, including a really extraordinary visit that Foreign Minister Penny Wong made to her hometown in Malaysia. And I think it was a beautiful tribute to her connection to the country that she was born in, but the country that she now serves as Foreign Minister. But those relationships cannot exist only between leaders or diplomats. They have to exist between our people. And we need Australians who understand and love the languages and cultures and histories and societies of the countries that are closest to us. And that is what we mean when we talk about Asian capability, because Australia's prosperity is interlinked with our neighbours. It is interlinked with Asia. Trade with our Asian partners is growing, and exporters rely on Asian markets. That we rely on Asian markets for our supply chains that stretch across the region, and some of the fastest growing economies in the world are right on our doorstep, and that is something that Australian businesses can take advantage of. And we are succeeding. We are forming those bonds, we are making those trades, and we are opening up those markets. But it requires people to understand how business is conducted and to understand local institutions and cultures in those countries and the contexts that they operate in. And that's the only way you can build lasting relationships, if it is done on mutual understanding. And as much as Asia capability...
You're right.
As much as Asia capability is important for Australian businesses, trade, investment and jobs, it is equally important to our national security. And we live in a region experiencing profound strategic change. Australia needs more diplomats, defence personnel, public servants, researchers and national security professionals who understand our closest neighbours and who know their political systems, their histories, their languages, and who understand how Australia and the world look from their perspective. And that is why this report is so important, because it asks us how we build Australia's Asia capability, not just for the next few years, but for generations ahead. Because when challenges arise, whether it is economic or security related, those skills and relationships cannot simply be switched on. They take years to build and develop. And that is why this report describes Asia capability as a vital sovereign capability and recommends a 10-year national capability strategy, bringing together departments of education, foreign affairs, defence and state governments across Australia. And there are a few places in Australia where the potential of that capability is more obvious than in my community. We are home to families from right across Asia. You see that in many of the electorates, Burwood, Strathfield, Homebush, Lickham, and you see that in the small businesses and schools and community groups. People in my community, they speak Mandarin, Korean, Hindi, Punjabi, Vietnamese, Tamil, Bengali, a whole range of Asian languages at home. And that is an enormous asset, one that we need to nurture. But unfortunately, it hasn't been something that previous governments have focused on. And I was speaking to a professor at the University of Sydney, and he said that because of the way our education system is set up, where we're not supporting the learning of a second language, we are wasting a lot of this incredible talent. Young children are coming into our education system and they are multilingual, having learnt different languages at home, but by the time they finish through our education system, they come out monolingual, not having retained their other languages, and I think that is a real shame. So I really welcome the report and commend the work that the committee has done, commend the work that the member for Gellibrand has done in chairing this committee, because they have identified that we do need to support Asian capability, Asian language learning, and that is going to help Australia's national security interests as well as our economic interests.
I thank the member, and I give the call to the honourable member for Griffith.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Our Minister for Education called education the great equaliser in an unequal world, and I strongly share that belief, and I'm confident that it's shared by many members in this place. Many years ago, I completed my own teacher training, and I'm also a mother to 2 young boys. I know education shapes every child's future. Every child deserves the best education Australia can offer, whatever school their family chooses. Good teachers shape learning outcomes, civics education and media literacy protect our democracy, and importantly, languages open up other parts of the world. These beliefs are why I am so pleased to serve on the House Standing Committee on Education, and I am proud of the report our committee has presented, Security and Prosperity in Asia, Building Asia Capability in Australia through the Education System and Beyond. I want to thank from the outset our Chair, the member for Gellibrand, and Deputy Chair, the member for Nichols, for leading, and all of my committee colleagues through this process. Deputy Speaker, Australia's security and prosperity are tied to our region. We need people who speak its languages, understand its cultures and histories, and have built trusted relationships there. We refer to this as Asia capability. It is a national capability built in classrooms, universities, workplaces, and through time spent in the region. The evidence of our nation's capability showed a pipeline deep in trouble. Domestic enrolments in Southeast Asian languages at Australian universities fell by 75% from 2005 to 2024. Take the study of Indonesian, for example, Deputy Speaker, where we heard some of the most concerning evidence. Barely 500 of Australia's 1 million domestic university students study Indonesian. At school, 3.3% of Australian Year 12 students studied a priority Asian language in 2023. Year 12 Indonesian enrolments fell from 1,160 students in 2010 to 486 nationwide in 2024. And in my home state of Queensland, the figures are even more stark. 4 students across our state were projected to sit a Year 12 Indonesian exam in 2026. Witnesses to our inquiry warned Indonesian teachers faces functional extinction in Australia by 2031. Indonesia is one of Australia's closest and most consequential neighbours. Losing our ability to teach Indonesian weakens our ability to understand the country and build strong relationships with its people. And translation technology in the age of AI just cannot fill that gap. We heard evidence that software can translate words, but it can't read a room, understand history, and build trust and relationships. The Australian Curriculum Assessment and Reporting Authority, ACARA, conveyed this to our committee very well. A calculator can produce an answer, but the user still needs enough mathematics to know whether that answer makes sense. Australia's Asian Australian communities hold deep language skills and cultural knowledge, yet heritage language skills often fall across generations. Families told our inquiry they want formal study for their children. Many South Asian Australian students have little access to Hindi, Punjabi, Bengali or Tamil. We have wonderful language programs right across my community of Griffith through so many of our schools. Of the 19 state schools in and around Griffith, 11 offer at least one Asian language. Japanese is taught at 9 of these state schools and Chinese at 5. That gives us a good base, but the full picture shows how narrow the choices remain. Those 19 state schools provide 35 language offerings. 14 offer Chinese or Japanese, the remaining 21 are European or other languages. The gap is clearer among 13 schools that offer only one language. Just 5 teach an Asian language. We have strong foundations across Griffith, but the pathway can break as soon as a student changes school, Deputy Speaker. A child may begin Japanese at primary school, then enter a secondary school where it is unavailable. Another student may study Chinese through to Year 12 and then find no clear university course or career path. A passionate teacher can spark a lifelong interest in a language and culture, but we cannot ask individual teachers to carry a national capability on their shoulders alone. We have local examples of learning experiences this report seeks to support. We've got so many great state schools offering fabulous programs, including West End State School, East Brisbane State School, Brisbane State High. Among other colleges in my area, Cannon Hill Anglican College runs Japan tours for their Japanese students. They've been running them for more than 20 years. Senior students visit Tokyo, Kyoto, Hiroshima. They complete a 4-day homestay. Peter Nakamura, the college's head of faculty for languages, has seen students use their Japanese in daily life. Some return as adults to reconnect with host families. And I know at Villanova College, students last year joined more than 450 language learners from 20 schools at the University of Queensland's Go Borderless Languages Experience Day. Villanova students then took part in a 13-day China immersion tour, using their Chinese in Beijing and attending school in Nanjing. These experiences give students a reason to keep studying, but not all students and all families are able to afford access to these types of programs. We know interest grows through real contact. The proposed Asia Leader schools draw on this practice and act as hubs for high-quality teaching. The proposed Australian Schools in Asia Consortium will help schools run immersion and exchange programs. ATAR incentives and university credit pathways will reward continued study. I know the effect of cultural immersion from my own life, and for me, that particular exposure was in the Pacific. At 16, I travelled to the Solomon Islands and I stayed at the Melanesian Brotherhood Central Headquarters at Tumbalea and at Selwyn College near Maravovo as part of my school's trip. I fell in love with the Solomon Islands language and culture, and I made lifelong friends. Anyone who knew me as a teenager can probably picture the Solomon Islands material that filled my bedroom. I had the great honour of meeting the new Prime Minister of the Solomon Islands, the Honourable Matthew Wale, during his visit to Australia earlier this year in June. Solomon Islands sits in the Pacific, and the same lesson applies across our broader region. Time in another country builds understanding no app can reproduce. Australia and the Solomon Islands share ancient cultural links, close geography, and a history of standing together through hard times. Meeting the Prime Minister brought me back to the friendships and curiosity that began when I was 16 years old. We need to make sure our future generations of young people have that same chance to form those connections too, in our region and particularly in Asia. The committee made 34 recommendations. The report recommends a national Asia capability strategy backed by a national data framework and dashboard. Australia needs clear goals and reliable information on subjects, enrolments, teachers and pathways. It recommends Asia Leader Schools and the Australian Schools in Asia Consortium. It recommends for the recognition of heritage language learning in classrooms. It backs targeted support for language teachers, a larger supply of specialist teachers and continuing professional development. For universities, the report recommends placing Asia capability among the priorities set by the Australian Tertiary Education Commission. It seeks protection for nationally strategic Asian languages in university funding agreements and shared language hubs for cross-institutional study. The report calls on the Commonwealth to lead through its own recruitment. Government agencies should recognise Asia capability as a priority in relevant jobs. Students need to see where language and regional knowledge can take them. Together, these recommendations connect primary school interest with secondary study, university courses and real careers. They support the teachers and institutions needed at each stage. Deputy Speaker, I would like to take this opportunity to thank every person and organisation that made a submission and attended our public hearings. The committee received hundreds of contributions and heard from dozens of witnesses. Many have spent their working lives helping Australians learn about our region. Teachers kept small classes open, researchers protected courses under pressure. Their participation shows parliamentary committees at their very best. Members tested evidence, asked questions and weighted different views. Good policy grows from this exchange. It helps us, elected representatives, make better decisions. I offer special thanks to the outstanding staff in the committee secretariat as well, Joel Bateman and Lisa Deans. Their expertise helped turn hundreds of submissions, hearing transcripts and policy ideas into a clear report for our parliament, with the member for Gellibrand's leadership. For local students, this report highlights the opportunity before us. It is about the child learning Japanese at East Brisbane State School who deserves a path through secondary school. It's about the student studying Chinese at Brisbane State High School who deserves to see a future for that skill. Australia needs the knowledge and confidence to make its own way in Asia. The capability starts with a teacher, a classroom, and the chance to meet people in our region. To every teacher, academic, student and community leader who contributed, thank you. You kept these subjects alive through years of uneven policy attention. This report's for you and for the students you have yet to teach.
I thank the member for Griffith and I give the call to the member for Menzies.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I rise today to speak on the report of the House Standing Committee on Education, Security and Prosperity in Asia, Building Australia's Asia Capability. At its heart, this report asks a very simple but important question. What kind of nation do we want Australia to become? An Australia that engages with our neighbours in Asia, opens the pathways of cultural and economic exchange and seizes the opportunities of being in the fastest developing region in human history, or an Australia that is insular, backward-looking and stagnant. As my friend the member for Banks said earlier in regards to this report, we are in one of the most complex geopolitical environments in our region since World War II. We have many areas where there is strategic competition, and we need to ensure that we maintain an international rules-based order built on free trade. The Albanese Labor government and our Foreign Minister has demonstrated again and again that we have the capability to be able to be a mature and long-term government that is building stronger ties within our region We've built stronger security ties with Indonesia and Singapore and Japan, and just this week with Vietnam, and we've repaired the relationship in our first term of government with our largest trading partner in China. Now, geography has made us a part of this region, but the choices we make today will determine whether we have the opportunities to grow with it. I acknowledge the outstanding work of the Chair, the member for Gellibrand, and every member of the committee on this report. Together, they have produced a thoughtful and forward-looking commentary that challenge us to make the most of the incredible opportunities before us. The committee has made 34 recommendations to reprioritise Asia within Australia's education system and ensure all Australians have the opportunity to learn about Asia and its languages. Together, they present a vision for a more confident Australia, one that understands its neighbours, embraces its diversity and equips future generations to thrive in the region we call home. A child who learns an Asian language in primary school may become a diplomat who negotiates Australia's interests decades from now. A student who participates in an exchange program may one day establish a business that creates jobs here in Australia. A young Australian who develops friendships across our region may go on to become a researcher, a teacher or a public servant who strengthens Australia's place in the Indo-Pacific. Yet the inquiry also heard a number of warnings. Participation in Asian language has declined markedly. The report warns that Indonesian language teaching is set to become functionally extinct within the next 5 years, while only 3.3% of Australian Year 12 students studied Chinese, Indonesian or Japanese in 2023, down from 4.7% in 2012. Domestic enrolments in Southeast Asian languages at Australian universities fell by 75% between 2005 and 2024. That's not a trajectory that we want to see continue. Specialist university programs are under increasing pressure. Opportunities for young Australians to immerse themselves in the region remain uneven and too often depend on their region where they live, circumstances or financial means rather than just their talent and ambition and hard work. At precisely the moment Australia's role in Asia is becoming more important than ever, our engagement with it risks falling behind, and that should concern every one of us. Because if we fail to invest in Asia capability today, we are narrowing Australia's future. We are limiting the relationships we can build and the opportunities we can seize, and opportunities and the influence that we can exert in Asia that will shape this century. In my community, in Menzies, these connections are part of everyday life. At the last census, around 44% of people were born overseas, compared with 28% nationally. We are one of the most diverse communities in the country. 46% of people speak a language other than English at home, and of the top 5 places of birth, 4 are in Asia: China, Malaysia, India and Hong Kong. If you walk through our local shopping precincts and you hear the languages across the region, you visit our schools and you meet students whose families have stories that stretch across continents. If you speak to local businesses, you quickly discover that many of their customers, suppliers and partners are found throughout Asia. Last Saturday night, I was fortunate to be at the Asian Business Association of Whitehorse Victorian Excellence Business Awards with the Prime Minister, where we celebrated many multicultural businesses across a range of fields, across tourism and hospitality, across trade, and we were able to recognise some of those outstanding Victorian businesses who give so much to our state and so much to our community. And I'd like to congratulate the President of ABAW, Bi Hong Wang, on another excellent event, as well as all of the executive and the volunteers with ABAW, the award nominees and the award recipients. As someone of mixed Chinese, Singaporean and Anglo-Celtic Australian heritage, engagement with Asia is something which is deeply personal to me. When we were growing up, we were fortunate enough to be able to visit my dad's family in Singapore every few years and enjoy the amazing food that's there, but also as I grew older, learn about the incredible story of Singapore and how it had gone from being a third world country to a first world country within a generation. When my dad was growing up, he slept in a house with a dirt floor in the same room as his 5 brothers and sisters, And now my cousins live in high-rise apartments that in a lot of ways are built on reclaimed land. They've got a world-class public transport system that I think many people in Australia would envy, incredibly high rates of home ownership, and a government that in many ways delivers on the social contract and has enjoyed the support of the Singaporean people for a long time. And I think that, there is a lot that we could learn from Singapore. As well, my wife is Japanese. I was lucky enough to live in Japan for 18 months, which is where we met. I was teaching English there. And similarly, there is a lot that we could learn from Japan in terms of public transport, in terms of innovations like modular housing, which they have and use extensively, and that could be part of the picture that we could take from that country to learn how we could increase our productivity in the construction sector. And indeed, many Australian businesses and developers are looking to other countries, as this report would recommend, to learn about their innovations and their expertise. And that is why some of the committee's most important recommendation is the development of a 10-year National Asia Capability Strategy. For many Australians, school is where curiosity first takes root. It's where a child hears another language for the first time, where teachers bring the rich culture and history of our region to life. The committee's recommendation to establish Asia Leader Schools recognises that we already have extraordinary examples of excellence across Australia. Schools that have built strong language programs and have forged lasting partnerships with communities throughout Asia. Schools where cultural understanding is a part of everyday learning. In Menzies, we're fortunate to have schools and community organisations already fostering many of these connections. Some of those would be language schools on the weekends. We have a number of Chinese language schools where people of both Chinese heritage but also the wider community have the opportunity to learn a language that, again, helps us connect better with one of our largest trading partners. These schools remind us that education is about preparing young people to participate confidently in an increasingly connected world. The committee also recognises that some of the most powerful lessons take place beyond the classrooms. There is something transformative about being able to go to another country, navigate their culture and discover that once felt unfamiliar begins to feel understood. No textbook can fully replace experiences like these, the experience of living and studying and working alongside people whose experiences are very different from our own. Programs like the New Colombo Plan have shown us what is possible. They have enabled thousands of young Australians to build friendships and develop professional networks and gain a deeper appreciation for our region. With those young Australians will return home with a broader perspective and greater confidence to represent Australia on the world stage. And that is one of the great opportunities that building our Asia capability brings, but it's also one of the great opportunities that diverse Australia brings. As I said, we have people of diverse background, of multicultural background in my electorate of Menzies, and them being able to bring their language skills, their cultural skills, but also the people-to-people networks, the business opportunities that brings, means that we'll be able to better engage with our region and better able to engage with the opportunities that the future presents. That's what we mean when we say diversity is one of our greatest strengths, and that is why we're absolutely committed to multiculturalism in Australia, and I commend this report to the House.
I thank the member for Menzies. I give the call to the member for Sturt. Thank you. The question is that debate be adjourned and the resumption of debate be made an order of the day for the next sitting. All those of that opinion say aye. Aye. Against say no. I think the ayes have it. I call the member for Sturt.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I move that the Federation Chamber do now adjourn.
Thank you. Call the member for Bowman.
I second the motion.
Thank you. The question is that the Federation Chamber do now adjourn. I give the call to the member for Wentworth.
Deputy Speaker, I want to talk today about the disconnect between politics and community, and then about small business and why that should be our focus right now. So there are a couple of when I talk to people about what do they want from politics, what they ask is firstly that their interests are put first and that they are listened to. But that is not what we have seen in the Parliament this week. We have seen a government who has, despite the community having very strong views on what needs to be done on gambling reform, the government refusing to listen to the full list of what the community wants and instead doing what vested interests want instead. That's why people don't trust government at the moment. And the second issue is about listening and talking about the things that are most important. What we've heard a lot in Parliament this week is about whether the Prime Minister made comments on a month-old podcast that were innuendo. Now, I thought the Prime Minister behaved inappropriately on that podcast, but frankly, people are not stopping me in the street about this. They're stopping me in the street about things that really make a difference to their lives. And this is what this Parliament should be focused on. And it's also our behaviour. We've been running a survey in Community Strong about why people hate politicians. 70% said it was because vested interests wield too much power. And one respondent said, question time should be something kids could watch and see the best of leadership, and said it's the most appalling version of a schoolyard. That was again on display this week. Now we know that Australians are having a hard time. Shane Wright pointed out this week that Australia's misery index, the combination of the unemployment rate, the inflation rate and the official interest rate, indicates Australians are more miserable than they were a year ago. And we shouldn't be surprised that they're starting to vote like it. I appreciate the government has tried to address productivity, which is so critical to making a difference in people's lives. And I am pleased to see, for instance, in the budget, there were things that I have been advocating for and were delivered, including changes to ESVCLP and VCLP, Your Future, Your Super and RG97, loss carryback and refundability, and other tax changes to help redirect productive capital away from unproductive housing. Some of those things will make a difference. But there is a long, long way to go to make the difference that Australians are seeking for in their lives. And I do think the focus needs to be squarely back on how do we make Australian businesses more successful and actually reduce the cost of their inputs in doing business, because then they can actually reduce the cost of the things that they provide to Australians. That is a big focus for me. So I want to talk about 3 things that are key for small business. 3 things they tell me that matter to them right now that the government could take action on right now are access to capital, social media and regulation. 1 in 5 small businesses have trouble accessing finance when they need it. More work needs to be done to make sure that small businesses can access our banking system, but one area we can immediately help on is access to working capital. The government should be adopting my proposal to tie payment times to procurement, setting a real enforceable standard, so that if you don't pay your small businesses on time, you don't get to access government funding. Secondly, on social media. Until recently, payment disputes were the largest area of complaint made to the Small Business Ombudsman. Now it's their social media account. Particularly since COVID, social media has become the primary communication channel for advertising and brand awareness. That has democratised the space and sparked innovation, but the latter can be pulled up without notice and without redress. I understand social media companies face competing demands to simultaneously come down hard on scams and fraud and also be the main channel for millions of businesses. But with no external dispute resolution, small businesses hit by false positive account flags are flooding my office every month asking for help to restore their accounts. That's why we need a dedicated ombudsman that can better manage these sorts of disputes so those businesses can keep on trading. And thirdly, regulation. Every government comes to Parliament promising to cut red tape, but since 2006 the number of restrictive terms in legislation has actually doubled. Meaningful work to address that means structural changes to incentives on regulators and legislators. Now that won't happen overnight. But quickly, and something the government could do right now, would be to lift the small business threshold from 15 people to at least 25 employees, lifting 46,000 businesses, small by any other measure, out of the red tape quagmire designed for corporates who are substantially better resourced. These are things that we should be doing right now to make an immediate difference to the lives of people running small businesses and to the lives of our constituents. So let's stop taking the pot shots at each other, stop listening to the vested interests and get back to Australians helping those who are doing it tough.
Give the call to the member for Jagga Jagga.
Well, thank you, Deputy Speaker. Well, our government is delivering real change in communities in Jagga Jagga, strengthening Medicare, investing in skills and training and providing more support for families. And these investments are making a real difference to people at a tough time in my community. Deputy Speaker, since we expanded incentives for bulk billing and for GPs to bulk bill last November, we have seen more and more GP clinics in Jagga Jagga move to fully bulk billing patients. Greensborough Medical and Dental Centre was one of the first local practices to make the switch, and I'm really pleased that others have followed, including Glencatherine Medical Centre in St Helena, Eltham Ridge Medical Centre and McLeod Medical Practice. And of course, this means that more people in Jagga Jagga can see a GP with their Medicare card without worrying about an out-of-pocket cost. I encourage more local clinics to continue to take up this investment. I hear constantly from locals how important it is to them to be able to see a bulk billing GP. Of course, we are supporting this with our Medicare urgent care clinics. We have 2 Medicare urgent care clinics locally, one in Burgundy Street in Heidelberg and one in Main Road in Eltham. And again, these are supporting our community to be able to get the healthcare they need when they need it with their Medicare card. And of course, our government has now made Medicare urgent care clinics a permanent part of our health system. And that's because as a Labor government, we believe in Medicare. We understand that this is the bedrock of our health system and the bedrock of what Australians expect in terms of being able to access healthcare. Of course, those opposites spent years and years attacking Medicare and they're still at it. John Howard once described bulk billing as an absolute rort. And through the decades of cut and neglect that we had from over there, the former government basically tried to abolish bulk billing entirely. That's what their settings did. The current Shadow Treasurer, the member for Goldstein, has described Medicare as a system designed to keep people ill. And just recently we've had the Shadow Minister having to ask the department for help understanding what Medicare actually means, asking officials to provide a definition. Doesn't that really sum up the attitude opposite towards Medicare? Well, Labor knows what Medicare means, and we know what it means to have a strong Medicare in our communities where locals can see a GP that is bulk billed, where they can walk into one of those Medicare urgent care clinics. Deputy Speaker, our government is also investing in local opportunities for people to get the education and skills they need without the cost holding them back. In Jagga Jagga, we have 2 fantastic local TAFE campuses. Melbourne Polytechnic has campuses in both Greensborough and in West Heidelberg. And our government has made free TAFE permanent. Through our key apprenticeship program, we're now providing additional support in the occupations that Australia needs, particularly in housing construction and in the transition to net zero. And I was really pleased recently to be able to visit family-run Demand Power in West Heidelberg, a business being run by Tracy and Ben there. I visited with Minister Andrew Giles to talk about their work and meet the electrical apprentices who are learning their trade there. And this is a great local business supporting not just the transition that's underway in households across our community to electrification, but also supporting our next generation of workers. If we are going to build more homes, if we're going to deliver the energy transition and strengthen our care economy, we need to invest in the people who will do that work. And that's what this business is doing locally, but it's what our government is also supporting local businesses to be able to do through our programs. We also, of course, need to be supporting people while they are training. And that's why I'm so pleased that we are now supporting students with our Commonwealth prac payment, changing the fact that for too many students, taking up some of these really important professions has been too hard because of that requirement for them to do unpaid placements. Students undertaking mandatory placements can now receive more than $338 a week. And from July next year, we'll be supporting students in 10 additional allied health disciplines, including physiotherapy and clinical psychology. We expect that around 95,000 students each year will benefit. And again, Deputy Speaker, this highlights a different approach we take to the Liberals. When the Liberals were last in government in Victoria, they cut around $1 billion in TAFE funding. They sacked more than 2,000 TAFE teachers and they closed 22 campuses, including in Greensborough. My community has not forgotten this. They have not forgotten the record. When it comes to the Liberals, when it comes to TAFE and training, they close it. When it comes to Medicare, they rip it away. Our government is investing in communities. Those opposites seek to shut them down.
Thank the member for Jagga Jagga. And I give the call to the member for Flinders.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Today I rise to congratulate 3 outstanding athletes from Flinders who represented Australia at the 2026 Commonwealth Games in Glasgow. Thomas McGough, who's a Year 10 student, became the youngest male in our Commonwealth Games athletics team at just 15. Tom ran the race of his life in the men's 100 T38 final, missing the podium by less than 0.2 of a second. But that is not a defeat, Deputy Speaker. That's a down payment on a very bright future indeed in Australian sport. Eileen Sika-Montana, who lives and trains on the Mornington Peninsula, well, she claimed gold in the women's 86 kilogram weightlifting with a Games record of 248 kilograms. It was her third consecutive Commonwealth Games gold, a feat matched by only 2 other women in our history. And then Emily Whitehead, born and raised in Flinders, competed in her third Commonwealth Games in women's artistic gymnastics, helping the Australian team win gold. A career that began at the age of 4 in a local gym has become one of the great sporting stories of our region. All 3 did Flinders and Australia proud in Glasgow, and so did the local clubs, coaches and families who backed these athletes long before. It's a reminder of what you can achieve in this country with talent, hard work and a supportive community behind you, none of which, incidentally, the Victorian government required to set the world's record for the most expensive way in history to watch someone else's opening ceremony. I nevertheless commend these extraordinary athletes and their endeavour. Deputy Speaker, children sit at the heart of everything we do in this place. It's why visiting schools is such a favoured task amongst all of us who are in this place, regardless of which side of politics we represent. Last Wednesday, I had the enormous pleasure of spending an hour with half a dozen student leaders from John Paul College in Frankston, a secondary college which services families in both the seats of Flinders and Dunkley. Together with the member for Dunkley, I had met these extraordinary young women at an event hosted by the Committee for Frankston and the Mornington Peninsula a couple of months earlier. That event brought together politicians from federal, state and council levels, and we listened to what these future leaders from schools across the peninsula wanted us to know about their generation. The 3 speakers that day from John Paul spoke with poise, grace, and an awe-striking sense of responsibility and commitment to their communities, to their families, and indeed to the future of Australia. One said, "I am my parents' hope, and I carry their sacrifice." Another said, thinking about her life after school, "If I leave, who helps my family at 4 a.m? And finally, another beckoned all of us, don't just listen to these stories, use them. I was so blown away by what I heard that day that I asked them, and indeed their teacher, Jack Charleston, if I could come up to Frankston and have a proper conversation with them. And last week, we sat down with no agenda, no predetermined topics for conversation, and just an afternoon in the classroom speaking and listening to each other. We compared stories about our upbringing, that we were grateful for our first jobs and the discipline that it gave us to managing both school achievement and professional development while still teenagers. They told me about their experience at being first-generation Australians, navigating an education system that's worlds away from what their parents knew, and being the interpreter for their parents of that Australian system and their extraordinary achievements in it. They told me stories of balancing work with studies, in one case work that includes caring for NDIS recipients in the few hours between finishing and starting school each day. So I thank these young women, Harleen, Alicia, Molly, Rihanna, Rena and Charlotte, for trusting me and for speaking freely with me and not finding me odd to be both so interested in them and inspired by them. These young women show leadership and intellect well beyond their years. So, Deputy Speaker, if ever you're in doubt about the future of this country, I strongly recommend that you sit down with a group of school students and listen to them, by which I mean really listen to them. You will leave with a strong sense that what we do here really matters and that in their generation that we will be even stronger.
Thank you, Member for Flinders. And I give the call to the member for Macquarie.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. It's a really sad fact that you learn so much more about your fellow community members only when they're gone, and that is certainly the case for a wonderful Blue Mountains resident, Dr. Heather Stewart. Heather joined my Labor Party branch just in the last year or so, but she'd been active in the Yes 23 campaign and The Voice. While I had insight into her passion for social justice and her love for her son, Jack, I now know much more about her career of caring as a GP across the Blue Mountains, Hawkesbury and Western Sydney, as an inspiring role model to other young women doctors, as a wonderful, warm, kind, caring, funny and straight-talking GP, in the words of her patients, until her retirement in 2018. As Trish Doyle, the State Member for Blue Mountains, said in her tribute, Heather was a passionate advocate for LGBTIQA+ colleagues in the medical profession and the local community. And as Chris Marks said, we all worked so well together to make a difference in the lives of women and children. Heather was passionate, dynamic, and so knew her job as a GP. So pleased to have shared that period of my life around her till the early 90s. I think all of us who had the opportunity to hear her thoughtful insights on policy see her personal commitment to participating in campaigns for change in her retirement years agree that we were so lucky to have shared a period of our lives with Heather. To Jack, Elizabeth, Callum and her family and many friends, and I include the member for Whitlam who's in the chamber, I express my deepest condolences on behalf of a very grateful community. Deputy Speaker, the Hawkesbury has a proud history in agriculture and animal production, and I was delighted to again attend and officially open the Greater Schools Sydney Cattle Competition recently. This year I co-hosted it with Dr. Rob Zammit. Over the past 100 days or so, students from across Greater Sydney have taken part in a steer growth and development project, giving them a unique hands-on experience. I'm sure it will go on to inspire many of these students to continue developing their skills in agriculture and animal production. A special mention to the teachers, many of whom are now retired but keep doing this competition, and to all the students who represented schools across Macquarie, including Richmond High, Colo High, Bede Paulding College, St Columba's College and Arndell Anglican College. It was fantastic to see your hard work come together on that day with those beautiful animals. Deputy Speaker, what a privilege to join in with Penrith Mayor Todd Carney for Penrith Council's Local Celebration Awards. Among those celebrated were Emu Plains local Bruce Turner AM, who was named Honoured Citizen, a fitting tribute to a man with more than 50 years of service to his community. I'm told that much of Bruce's work has been behind the scenes, which goes with the territory for an auditor. His contribution to auditing has been recognised internationally. Nationally, Bruce received an AM in 2015 and his work has extended to agencies like the New South Wales Ombudsman and ICAC. Even closer to home, his contribution to Penrith is recognised at the ATO site and on the Penrith City Wall of Achievement. Alongside this is Bruce's passion for preserving the heritage of the Nepean region, with a trilogy of books that capture local history and events and ensure that so many local stories will be known by future generations. A very well-deserved honour, and it was great to see Bruce's family celebrate with him. We also marked Farah Madden's AM at the Australia Day honours list. She received it for her service to architecture and her advocacy for people with a disability. And while not a constituent of mine, I also want to mention Michael Allen, PSM and now OAM. Mike is chair of Link Wentworth, which is working with the federal and state governments to expand the region's affordable and social housing. And Mike was one of many who I cheered on at their home suite annual sleep out at the Penrith Regatta Centre. Also celebrated was Michael Kovacs, AFSM, who received a King's Birthday honour for his work with the Rural Fire Service since the day he joined at the age of 14 in 1988. He's fought many fires across my region, including the Black Summer fires. These are all shining examples of what makes the Nepean community special.
Thank you, and my condolences on the passing of Dr Heather. I give the call to the member for Wide Bay.
Thanks, Deputy Speaker. I rise to express my strong support for Roadcraft and their application for funding under the Queensland Government's Road Safety Grants program. As caravan ownership and recreational travel continue to grow in popularity, it is vital that drivers understand the unique challenges associated with towing large caravans. Since 2014, Roadcraft at Gympie has played an important role in improving road safety through its specialised towing courses and practical driver education programs. Led by Charlene Macon, Roadcraft has a strong reputation for delivering high-quality, hands-on training that gives drivers the skills, knowledge and confidence to tow caravans safely and responsibly. Safe towing requires specialised skills and practical experience that are not typically covered through standard driver licence requirements. Roadcraft's proposal aligns closely with the objectives of the Road Safety Grant Program, which seeks to increase participation in caravan skills education and practical training. With their proven track record of delivering real outcomes, Roadcraft is well placed to achieve positive outcomes with the support of this funding. Roadcraft's proposal will deliver safer and better informed drivers and stronger safety outcomes for Queensland's growing caravan towing community. I commend Roadcraft for its ongoing commitment to road safety and driver education. Deputy Speaker, for over 36 years, the Noosa Dolphins Rugby Union Club has been at the heart of Noosa's community, but significant infrastructure upgrades are needed to accommodate the club's future. I recently met with Andrew Higginbotham and John Lewis from the club, who outlined plans to lift the Dolphins' facilities to state and national competition standards, allowing the club to attract larger sporting events and championships, and improving amenities for women, families and people with disability. These upgrades will provide greater accessibility, attract more visitors and encourage more overnight stays and more spending in local businesses to strengthen Noosa's economy. The club is already a vital community hub, with local schools and communities and groups using its facilities for sport, training, events and festivals. Investment in the upgrade will expand those opportunities for years to come. The project is shovel-ready, backed by strong community support, and the club has already made significant investment in planning and approvals. I strongly support the club's application for conditional funding under the Queensland Government's Game On program to provide the security needed to unlock future federal funding opportunities that will deliver a project to benefit Noosa and the wider region for generations to come. Deputy Speaker, our nation's military history deserves to be commemorated, understood and passed on to future generations. That is why I support the Maryborough Military Aviation Museums Association's application for funding under the Saluting Their Service Commemorative Grants program. This project is about more than preserving artefacts. It will bring history to life. The association proposes to transform their Maryborough Airport Museum into a regional centre for heritage education, allowing visitors to engage deeply with the stories of those who served, creating a lasting legacy of the men and women who trained and worked at RAAF Station Maryborough. During World War II, almost 4,000 men and women trained or were on staff at RAAF Station Maryborough Wireless Air Gunner School No. 3, and 569 lost their lives during their World War II service. Their service helped shape our nation's future, and their history must be remembered. Led by Jenny Elliott, the association's volunteers have worked to preserve and share Maryborough's remarkable military aviation history, and I've been a keen supporter of them ever since I've been elected. This project will provide a lasting investment in remembrance and education, enhancing Maryborough's reputation as a city that honours, preserves and commemorates its unique contribution to Australia's wartime service.
Thank the member for Wide Bay, and I give the call to the member for Hunter.
Thank you, Speaker. What an announcement for the Hunter. The future of Tomago Aluminium has been secured beyond 2028. And for the community of Hunter, that's absolutely huge. Tomago isn't some distant industrial asset on a spreadsheet in Canberra. It's ours, it's part of the Hunter, and it's part of who we are as a region. It's more than 1,000 people going to work every day at the Spelter, and another 5,000 jobs supported across the Hunter. Those jobs are our neighbours, our mates, our families. They are people who spend their pay packets in our local shops, put their kids through our local schools and support our local sporting clubs. They are the contractors, the suppliers, the tradies, the transport workers and the small businesses that keep the Hunter moving. So when we talk about securing Tomago, we're talking about securing a big part of the Hunter's future. The state and federal government are investing $2.5 billion to secure Tomago aluminium smelter at Tomago beyond 2028. Tomago Aluminium will also invest at least another $1.1 billion in this facility. That is serious investment in our region, and that's exactly the kind of investment that the Hunter deserves. Because people in the Hunter know how to make things. We always have. We don't just talk about industry here, we do it. We know what it means to get up early, put the work gear on, and go out and do a job that really does matter. We know what it means to build something, produce something, and be proud of what leaves the factory gate at the end of the day. That's why this announcement matters so much to me, and that's why this matters so much to the broader Hunter. I want the next generation of Hunter kids to grow up knowing that they don't have to leave our region to get a good, safe, secure, skilled job. I want them to know that there's still big industry right here in the Hunter. There'll still be manufacturing here. There'll still be places like Tomago where people can build a career, raise a family and make a contribution to this country. Speaker, this outcome didn't just happen on its own. The Hunter members fought hard for it. We made the case for Tomago Aluminium at every opportunity. We made sure people in Canberra understood what's at stake for our region. And I particularly want to recognise my friend and colleague, the member for Patterson, Meryl Swanson. Meryl has been an absolute champion and relentless on Tomago Aluminium. And this announcement is a credit to her work and the work that we did as a broader Hunter caucus. It's a credit to the whole Hunter team, because when it comes to jobs in our region, we stick together. We know what's at stake and we know the Hunter deserves a government that is prepared to back us. Speaker, Tomago Aluminium is Australia's largest aluminium smelter, but for us, its importance goes well beyond that title. It's part of a much bigger story about what sort of future we want for the Hunter. We want the Hunter to keep making things. We want the Hunter to keep employing people in good, safe, secure industrial jobs. I want the Hunter that remains at the centre of Australia's manufacturing economy. And I'm proud to be part of a Labor government that shares that ambition. Australia shouldn't simply dig up our resources, put them on a ship and ship them overseas. We should add value right here. We should make things here. And as far as I'm concerned, there's no better place to do that than in the mighty Hunter. This agreement will also give Tomago the long-term energy certainty it needs to support major new renewable generation and firming capacity. That means the Hunter can keep doing what it's always done, powering the country, making the things the country needs and the world needs, and creating good, safe, secure jobs while we're at it. That's what a future made in Australia looks like from where I stand. It looks like Tomago Aluminium. It looks like thousands of Hunter workers keeping their jobs. It looks like billions of dollars being invested in our region. And it looks like the Hunter continuing to do what it does best. Make things, build things, and just simply get on with the job. I'm incredibly proud of this announcement. I'm proud of my Hunter colleagues, the member for Patterson, Meryl Swanson, the member for Newcastle, Sharon Clayton, and the member for Shortland, Pat Conroy. I'm proud that our government listened to the Hunter and backed the Hunter. Most of all, I'm proud that generations of Hunter workers will now continue to have a future at Tomago. It's a win for Tomago, it's a win for manufacturing, and it's a bloody good win for the Hunter. Finally, I want to thank the workers, their families, the communities, everybody who's been involved in helping make this happen. And I especially want to thank the AWU, the ETU and the AMWU and all of your union members for backing this in and really getting behind this. Without your help, we wouldn't be where we are today, so thank you.
Thank you, Member for Hunter. The question is that the motion be agreed to. All those of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The Federation Chamber stands adjourned until 10:30 a.m. on Monday, the 17th of August 2026.